around 3 o'clock a.m. on January 15, 2017. The 911 emergency service in Greene County, Ohio, received an alarming call from a bystander. The caller reported a wounded woman lying on the side of the road in Yellow Springs, approximately 25 kilometers from the city of Dayton. He shouted into the phone that he saw blood coming from her head. It looked like she had stopped breathing. Emergency services arrived at the crime scene, and at 3:30 a.m., she was later identified as 63-year-old Sherry Mendenhall. Sherry had been shot in the head, and there was a lot of blood around her. She was still wearing pajamas, indicating the attacker likely surprised her in bed. She tried to escape, but didn't succeed. The scene was disturbing and atypical for a prosperous residential area in this quiet town. She was found near a 2-story house, and the police decided to check the house for the criminal or any other victims. Approaching the house, the police officers noticed that the door was open, which seemed very suspicious and a potential sign of danger. They went inside and began calling out for the owners. Moving around the premises, they received no answer. It was eerily quiet inside. The police continued inspecting the house and discovered a man's body in the bedroom at the back of the first floor. He showed no signs of life. Later, arriving medical personnel confirmed his death. The deceased was identified as William Skip Brown, 44. He had been shot multiple times. Questioning neighbors, the law enforcement officers learned some details about the victims. Sherry and William had been best friends for many years and were neighbors, living in different apartments in the house. Their relationship was platonic, and they often helped each other. William's apartment was on the first floor and housed a small art gallery that he had organized. Sherry lived alone on the second floor. The patrolman called for reinforcements, and by the time the investigators arrived, it was already getting light. The forensic experts began by examining Sherry's body and immediately noticed one significant detail: her head was facing the road, away from the house. This suggested that she was trying to run away from her home when she was shot. Presumably, William had been killed first, and Sherry tried to escape, but the killers caught up with her, leaving her no chance. The killers had acted to remain undetected. William was found in the bedroom at the foot of his bed with multiple gunshot wounds. Investigators noticed a spent .22 caliber rifle cartridge in the hallway, outside the bedroom, and 3 9mm bullet casings on the bedroom floor. One of the casings from a 9mm pistol was found on the street near Sherry's body. Law enforcement officials sent these materials for examination, which later revealed male DNA on one of the casings. However, no matches were found in the police database, and the suspect could not be identified. The perpetrator likely had no criminal record, or his DNA sample had not been taken. Rifle bullets had hit the headboard, the mattress, the walls, and the closet just behind the foot of the bed. There were multiple blood spatters on the wall and door. William had 4 gunshot wounds to the chest, back, and torso. The coroner determined that 2 shots were from a .22 caliber rifle and 2 from a 9mm pistol. Police initially assumed that 2 criminals were involved, as 2 distinct types of weapons were used in the shooting. It seemed unlikely that a single person could fire both a rifle and a pistol simultaneously. The investigators' initial theory centered on robbery, given the presence of an art gallery within the house containing several valuable artworks. Furthermore, a series of recent house robberies had occurred in the area, and the perpetrators remained at large, potentially linking them to this case. However, a visual inspection of the crime scene revealed no signs of forced entry or struggle. The gallery on the first floor primarily showcased the work of the deceased's grandfather, Axel Bonson, a renowned photographer, alongside other pieces. Father Ulma, familiar with the gallery's collection, confidently asserted that none of the exhibits had been stolen, including money, equipment, and jewelry. Even valuables in plain sight remained untouched. Consequently, the robbery theory was dismissed by William Brown's business associate. In addition to the gallery, which William pursued as a hobby, he operated a small roofing business, his primary source of income. He also enjoyed photography as a pastime, Investigators discovered that William had attempted to dial 911 twice, unsuccessfully. It appeared he heard or saw the intruders and tried to call for help, but was unable to complete the call. Fortunately for the police, William had installed an extensive video surveillance system for security purposes. Covering nearly all angles of the house, investigators seized the recordings and began processing the information, which proved to be invaluable. The outdoor surveillance cameras captured the moment of Sherry's murder at 3:00 a.m. The recordings show Sherry running out of the house and turning left down the street. Attempting to escape, she ran directly under a streetlight and then fell. Shot in the face, Sherry died on the spot. Shortly after, a tall, slender figure appeared in the frame, holding a weapon. The individual hastily exited the house, turned left toward the road, approached Sherry, and confirmed she was dead. This suggested the assailant possessed proficient marksmanship skills or, less likely, achieved a lucky shot. While the latter possibility couldn't be disregarded, the accuracy implied training. Although the criminal's face wasn't visible due to the low quality, black and white night mode recordings, the surveillance footage clearly showed a tall, thin individual carrying a gun. The recording showed no evidence of a second suspect. Investigators were surprised by the boldness of the murder, which happened in a residential area in the middle of the night. The attacker's confidence shocked the police and neighbors. People reported hearing a gunshot, but no one saw the murder happen. Meanwhile, the autopsy results were finalized. The forensic report indicated that Sherry was killed by a single 9mm bullet fired from a distance of 20-25 meters, not from ground level, but from an elevated position of approximately 3-4 meters. This suggested the shot originated from either a second-floor window or a balcony or canopy. This was a significant clue, further reinforcing the idea that the shooter possessed considerable skill with firearms. Investigators found no evidence or leads in Sherry's apartment. Sherry, a retiree, had raised 4 sons who were now grown and lived independently. She had 8 grandchildren whom she often babysat. She had no professional competitors who might wish her harm. She kept no diary that might have provided clues, and her relatives maintained that she had no known enemies. Perhaps Sherry was an accidental victim. The police theorized that William was the intended target. The criminals came to his house specifically because of him, seeking to harm him, and shot him first. This suggested a targeted attack motivated by a personal vendetta. Detectives began investigating William's network of contacts to identify potential suspects. It quickly became apparent that William had in fact, experienced conflicts with both former partners and several former employees. Detectives began scrutinizing these individuals, searching for someone with a compelling motive. The investigation began by focusing on current and former employees, as well as business partners, who might have held a grudge against William and sought revenge. It was discovered that a former partner had threatened William shortly before the murder, presenting a potentially strong motive for the crime. However, these leads ultimately proved fruitless. This individual had an ironclad alibi for the time of the crime. He was visiting his grandmother in Arizona and physically could not have been present to commit the shooting. He also denied any involvement and successfully passed a polygraph test, leading to his exclusion from the suspect list. Detectives continued to examine the list of potential enemies. One name, in particular, drew their attention: a disgruntled former employee, who was also the nephew of William, a 25-year-old named Dustin Merrick. William had considered Dustin his right-hand man and trusted him implicitly. Then, something happened between them, and Dustin was eventually fired. What surprised everyone was that no one knew exactly why he was fired. The prevailing understanding was that something serious had occurred. As William wouldn't have dismissed a relative, he was so eager to help over something trivial. Presumably, the issue was Dustin's irresponsible and negligent attitude towards work, which caused problems. Several colleagues of the deceased stated that Dustin harbored a strong grudge against William due to the quarrel and his subsequent dismissal. Dustin believed his uncle owed him $400, which William refused to pay. Dustin was not just offended, but very angry with William. And some even believed that the guy could well have decided to commit murder because of money. Dustin Merrick was invited to the police station for questioning. During the interview on January 20, 2017, Dustin confirmed that he was angry with his uncle because of the conflict. Dustin said that William had fired him because he refused to work overtime and that he considered this a flimsy excuse to get rid of William. While Dustin admitted to being offended by his uncle, he claimed he wouldn't kill a relative over something so insignificant. In reality, the roofing construction business demands a lot of hard, fast work. Therefore, high performance is expected. Roofers are often asked to stay after work. William wanted his team to be composed of exactly such people who are passionate about the business and work to the fullest, and he was ready to pay good money. The faster the job was completed, the more money he received. William made a mistake by hiring him. Dustin was lazy, uninterested in his work, and performed poorly. His projects were always late, causing William problems and penalties. Therefore, William decided to fire Dustin for his negligence. According to Dustin, on the day of the crime, he was with his younger brother, Brett Merrick, staying with him overnight. They drank and then slept until the morning. Dustin asserted that his brother could confirm his alibi, which Brett, in fact, did. However, investigators were in no hurry to rule out Dustin as a suspect. Law enforcement officers asked Dustin to provide a DNA sample to compare with DNA from the crime scene and, if there was a discrepancy, eliminate him as a suspect. Dustin agreed, stating that he wanted to clear his name, and provided a DNA sample. It then came to light that Dustin was a member of the National Shooting Association, a first-class shooter, and owned several types of weapons, including a .22 caliber rifle and a 9mm pistol. Given that the murder was committed with these types of weapons, further suspicions arose. The investigators requested Dustin's weapons for ballistic examination, and he granted them permission. The police were impatiently awaiting the results of the DNA and weapon examinations. During a police inspection of the 9mm handgun designed to hold 13 bullets, they found only 9 bullets inside. Notably, 4 cartridges were missing, a detail that aligned with the shell casings recovered from the crime scene. Soon, the examination results arrived. Astonishing everyone, ballistics confirmed a match between the murder weapon and the handgun found at Dustin's house, which was registered in his name. Furthermore, Dustin's DNA matched the DNA found on the cartridge casings recovered from the crime scene. All evidence pointed to Dustin. However, after reviewing the surveillance camera footage again, the detectives noticed another man. This man had a different build and height. The police immediately suspected Dustin's brother, Brett. According to Dustin, he and Brett often spent their days together drawing Sullivans. Brett had even provided Dustin with an alibi. However, Brett seemed to be the most likely accomplice and closely resembled the figure captured on CCTV on January 24, 2017. Based on this significant evidence, Dustin was arrested, and Brett was brought in for questioning. At that time, Brett was unaware of Dustin's arrest and continued to corroborate his brother's alibi. Brett denied any involvement in the crime, and the police had little concrete evidence against him beyond the unclear surveillance recordings, which were insufficient to establish guilt. Out of desperation, the detectives decided to use a ruse. They told Brett a partial truth that Dustin had been arrested and that there was circumstantial evidence against Brett. They also falsely claimed that Dustin had implicated him in the crime. This tactic worked. Initially, Brett seemed skeptical, but the detectives were convincing, using all available information to pressure him. Brett became noticeably nervous, and his story became inconsistent. Finally, Brett cracked and confessed. According to Brett, he had gone to Dustin's house that day to draw fur, a shared hobby. However, Dustin was already drunk. They drew, chatted, and continued to drink. Dustin continued to express his anger toward William, feeling that he had been underpaid. Suddenly, Dustin jumped up and headed for the door. Brett heard Dustin open the door and went outside. He saw Dustin getting into his car, apparently intending to confront William. Dustin was very agitated. Brett hurried to the car and got in with him, hoping to control his brother's actions and prevent him from doing something foolish. They drove to William's house, parking discreetly near an old barn to conceal their car. Dustin took out a gun, a rifle, from the back. Brett jumped out of the car and began to question his brother. "What's going on? Why do you need a gun?" Dustin handed him another gun. Dustin knew the locations of the security cameras around the house and avoided them. Brett followed him, carrying the second gun. The brothers climbed onto the roof of a porch to avoid the cameras and quietly made their way into William's house. Brett stood in the kitchen, behind a wall. To protect his brother, he watched as William approached the bedroom. Then he heard gunshots. Brett then saw Sherry run out from the second floor, screaming and fleeing the house, startled by the gunshots. According to Brett, they had not anticipated such a turn of events and were completely taken aback. Then he fired a shot toward the door to scare Sherry, who was running down the stairs. Brett did not intend to harm her, just wanted to scare her. Then, Dustin left the bedroom and chased after Sherry to eliminate her as an unwanted witness. He climbed out onto a canopy and shot at her. She fell dead. This confirmed the detective's initial belief that Sherry was an accidental victim of this crime, suffering only because she lived next to the first victim. When they were fleeing, Brett unknowingly was caught on a surveillance camera. Dustin, who worked for William and often visited the house, knew the camera locations and managed to evade them, which is why he was not filmed. Brett maintained that he was not involved in the murders. His only guilt was getting into the car with his brother and failing to stop Dustin from committing the crime. Following his confession, Brett Merrick, 24, was arrested. Just like his brother, Brett's story left the detectives with several unanswered questions. If Brett was supposedly watching Dustin to stop him from acting recklessly, why didn't Brett confiscate Dustin's gun? Furthermore, why would Brett accompany Dustin inside the house and fire gunshots to frighten Sherry? This behavior seemed illogical and suspicious, leading police to suspect Brett might have also shot William. While it seemed improbable that Dustin fired both a rifle and a pistol simultaneously, the police lacked definitive proof, and both brothers denied it. Dustin Merrick was charged with aggravated murder. Brett Merrick was charged with complicity in 2 counts of aggravated murder and assault. Both Dustin and Brett faced the death penalty, the legal penalty in Ohio, and the prosecution immediately offered them a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. Initially, Dustin and Brett refused the deal. However, they soon changed their minds. In September 2018, Dustin and Brett, in order to avoid capital punishment, entered into a plea bargain with the prosecution to reduce their sentence, thus giving up their right to appeal the verdict. They also refused to testify at the trial and tell the details of the attack. The prosecution and the victims' relatives also approved this deal in order to avoid a painful and lengthy trial. Dustin Merrick pleaded guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the right to parole, plus 11 years for the home invasion, and 3 years for the other charges. He will spend the rest of his life in prison without parole. Brett Merrick regretted that he participated in this crime and sincerely repented. The victims forgave him. Brett pleaded guilty to complicity and was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the right to parole. His release date is scheduled for 2042, by which time he will be 49 years old. The murders of Sherry Mendenhall and William Skip Brown have rocked Yellow Springs, a quiet town known for its friendliness and safety. The deaths of 2 close friends, committed by William's nephew in a personal dispute, are not only a personal loss, but also a reminder of the consequences of unresolved resentment. Surveillance cameras and DNA evidence helped bring Dustin and Brett Merrick to justice, but they cannot erase the pain of the family and community. The case highlights the importance of resolving conflicts peacefully and the need for support systems to prevent similar tragedies. Yellow Springs, though traumatized, continues to work to restore trust and unity among its residents. The story of Ezra McCandless and Alex Woodworth is a complicated, bizarre. At first, they were just friends. Over time, their bond evolved into a passionate relationship, one that ultimately brought more harm than good to both of them. Ezra McCandless was born on October 6, 1997, in the city of Stanley, Wisconsin. At birth, her name was Monica Kay. There's very little public information about her early life or family background. What is known is that she was often described as highly emotional, impulsive, and, at times, unpredictable. She pursued her goals with intensity, sometimes disregarding the consequences. After graduating from high school, Monica enrolled in college where she studied management. It was there that she met a young man and quickly became involved in a passionate relationship. However, the romance was anything but stable. They frequently argued, and on several occasions, their conflicts escalated into physical confrontations. Eventually, the relationship ended when the boyfriend chose to walk away, something that deeply impacted Monica's mental and emotional well-being. Around the same time, Monica's parents decided to end their marriage after nearly 2 decades together. Their separation only worsened her fragile state. The emotional toll of her family's conflicts, combined with the painful breakup, left her feeling overwhelmed. In a moment of emotional upheaval, she made a bold decision to leave everything behind and start over in a new city. She dropped out of college and legally changed her name to what she believed sounded more distinctive, Ezra McCandless. In early 2017, she moved to Eau Claire, a small city in western Wisconsin. At the time, she didn't have a clear plan for her future. Ezra began frequenting a well-known local coffee shop and cafe called Racy Leans, where she met a young employee named Alex Woodworth. Alex had just turned 23. He was a student, worked part-time as a barista to support his studies. They started talking regularly, and over time a friendship developed between them. In May 2017, at that same cafe, Ezra, still just 19, met Jason Mengel, a 33-year-old former military medic. Despite the significant age difference, the two quickly grew close and entered into a romantic relationship. Interestingly, Jason was a friend of Alex's. It was through Alex that Ezra and Jason met. Jason was calm, approachable, and emotionally stable, quite the opposite of the fiery and impulsive Ezra. But as often happens, opposites attract. Just a month after they met, Ezra moved into Jason's home. They began living together as a couple. Later, Jason shared that he had fallen for Ezra, the petite woman with curly light brown hair, from the moment he saw her. To him, she seemed charming, full of energy, slightly eccentric, and fond of attention. Ezra, in turn, saw Jason as a dependable partner, someone with whom she could build a lasting and stable future. Ezra and Jason continued to frequent Racy Leans, often spending time with Alex. The three of them developed a close and seemingly trusting friendship. It's worth noting that Alex was studying both philosophy and psychology, dreamed of one day becoming a teacher at a high school or college. He was known for his kind, gentle nature, and willingness to help anyone in need, qualities that naturally drew people to him. The trio soon became nearly inseparable. Meanwhile, Ezra and Jason's relationship appeared to flourish. Those around them referred to them as the perfect couple, believing it was only a matter of time before they got married. However, in October 2017, the relationship between Ezra and Jason began to unravel. This started when Ezra unexpectedly discovered she was pregnant. Overwhelmed and unsure of what to do, she broke the news to Jason, her partner of nearly 6 months at the time. He, too, was caught off guard. Neither of them had planned for such a significant life change, and starting a family wasn't in their immediate plans. Lacking the emotional support she needed, Ezra and Jason eventually agreed to terminate the pregnancy. The decision was deeply distressing for Ezra. After careful consideration, she went to a clinic and had the procedure. That event marked a turning point, the beginning of the end for a relationship that many had once considered strong and promising. Ezra sank into a depression. She withdrew from others, became noticeably anxious, and short-tempered. Her emotional health deteriorated rapidly. She would often cry for no apparent reason and then suddenly spiral into arguments or emotional outbursts over seemingly trivial matters. Jason tried to remain patient and supportive, but he felt the situation slipping out of his control. Around this time, Ezra began spending significantly more time with Alex. They would go on long walks and talk for hours, opening up to each other about their personal struggles. Jason didn't see anything inappropriate in their growing closeness. Knowing Alex was seriously studying psychology, he believed such a friend could be a positive influence for Ezra, especially given her unstable state of mind. After all, the three of them had known each other for a while and shared a deep level of trust. Alex proved to be a compassionate listener. He never judged, criticized, or dismissed Ezra's emotions. He was thoughtful, intelligent, and had a curious mind, traits that made him easy to connect with. Ezra felt understood and accepted for who she truly was. With Alex, she didn't have to pretend. She could be vulnerable, pour her heart out, and speak freely about anything. Their bond deepened, leading to mutual attraction and eventually an intimate relationship. Because Ezra was still officially with Jason, they kept their affair a secret. Naturally, Jason had no idea that the person he trusted most was seeing his closest friend behind his back. Ezra's demeanor began to change. She stopped crying, seemed noticeably happier, and initiated fewer arguments. It appeared she was returning to her old self. Seeing her in better spirits, Jason assumed that her friendship with Alex was helping her heal. He had no clue that he was now the third party in a hidden love triangle. This double life went on for several months. During that time, Ezra didn't make any serious plans for her future, simply going with the flow and enjoying the attention from both men without fully considering where this path might lead. Then came a turning point. One January evening in 2018, while Ezra was asleep, her phone, left in the living room, began buzzing with incoming messages. Curious about the late-night activity, Jason picked it up to see who was texting her so persistently. What he found shocked him. The messages were from Alex, and the content made it clear that his girlfriend had been in a romantic relationship with his friend for quite some time. The confrontation that followed was intense. Despite Ezra's attempts to deny everything and offer flimsy excuses, Jason didn't believe her. They had been living together for 8 months, and 3 of those months Ezra had been secretly seeing Alex. Feeling deeply betrayed, Jason ended the relationship immediately. By the next day, he had packed her belongings and asked her to leave. Ezra's relationship with Alex also quickly fell apart, and the two went their separate ways. Now completely alone, without either of the men she had once been involved with, Ezra found herself overwhelmed by resentment, heartbreak, and the crushing realization that she had lost control of the situation. The emotional weight of her circumstances pushed her into despair. She struggled to figure out her next move. Seeking a change of scenery, she returned to her hometown and moved back in with her father. Still clinging to hope, Ezra continued reaching out to Jason every day, calling and sending messages in an effort to win him back. Jason responded, but his tone was distant and cold. It was clear he had no interest in rekindling their relationship. Ezra tried to portray herself as a victim of unfortunate circumstances, placing the blame squarely on Alex, begging Jason for forgiveness, swearing that everything that had happened was a terrible mistake. But Jason wasn't buying it. Consumed by frustration and emotional turmoil, Ezra's behavior began to spiral. She started exhibiting increasingly erratic and concerning signs. At one point, she went to the police and filed a report alleging that she had been abused by one of Jason's friends. According to Ezra, the individual had spiked her drink during a party and taken advantage of her while she was incapacitated. However, Ezra had no concrete evidence to support her claims. Her story shifted frequently, and her statements lacked consistency. Investigators quickly began to suspect she wasn't being truthful. Ezra said she couldn't clearly remember what happened because someone supposedly drugged her drink. However, even considering this, her account of what occurred was confusing and didn't make sense. Surprisingly, Jason seemed to believe her. He even called to comfort her after hearing the news. Ezra interpreted this as a sign that he still had feelings for her and took his concern as proof that their bond hadn't faded. Conversely, when police contacted Alex, he did not support Ezra's account, saying she told him it was consensual. The abuse case was eventually dismissed, in part because of Alex's testimony, and Ezra was devastated. With hatred, she continued to believe she could use Alex as a means to win Jason back. But this time, her plan was much darker. In Ezra's mind, Alex would either help her willingly or be removed as an obstacle, no matter the cost. For more than a month, there was no word from her, and Jason was beginning to believe she had finally moved on with her life. But on the morning of March 22, 2018, Ezra suddenly reappeared in Eau Claire as if nothing had happened. She knew exactly where to find both of her former partners and went directly there. Ezra walked into Racy Glean's, the local cafe where Jason happened to be having breakfast. He was visibly startled to see her. Her sudden appearance felt like a bad omen. She asked where Alex was, and when she learned that he wasn't working that day, she abruptly left. Jason had a gut feeling something wasn't right. Suspecting she might head to Alex's house, he decided to follow her. Concerned about what might happen, he got on his bike, hoping to avoid drawing attention, and quietly trailed behind her. Ezra drove her 2003 Chevy Impala straight to Alex's place. Jason saw her car parked outside and realized she had gone inside. Wanting to make sure everything was okay, he approached a window and peeked in. Inside, Ezra and Alex appeared to be having a tense conversation. Their expressions made it clear this wasn't a friendly chat. Jason, worried, decided to intervene. He entered the house, surprising both of them. They tried to act casual, but it was clear they hadn't expected him. Just then, a police car pulled up. Alert neighbors had called to report a suspicious person looking into windows. All three came outside and reassured the officers that everything was fine. Ezra silently got back into her car, though she didn't leave right away. Once law enforcement was satisfied that no laws were being broken, they left. Jason left soon after, riding away on his bike. Ezra and Alex standing by her car, continuing their conversation. Ezra later convinced Alex to go for a drive with her so they could talk things over in private. He agreed. They got into her car. She left the city limits and took a rural road through fields and woods without any clear destination in mind. What exactly was said during that drive is still unclear, but Ezra later claimed she asked Alex to help her fix things with Jason. She wanted Alex to take responsibility for everything that had happened and to convince Jason that Alex had pressured her into an intimate relationship and that she had later regretted it. Alex refused. He wouldn't lie to protect her. That refusal triggered a strong reaction in Ezra. She reportedly slammed on the gas pedal, speeding down a rough, muddy dirt road. The car jolted violently over bumps and potholes. At one point, she lost control, veered off the road. The vehicle became stuck in the thick mud, a result of heavy rain the night before. Despite multiple attempts to get free, the car bottomed out, and the engine stalled. They were alone, with weak cell service, and the nearest house was miles away. Tensions quickly escalated, then, an argument erupted in the confined space of the car. What followed was a violent and bloody incident. To this day, investigators have been unable to piece together exactly what happened next. Ezra changed her story multiple times, and each version conflicted with physical evidence. The case quickly grew more complex as the clues never quite lined up with her ever-shifting narrative. Let's fast forward several hours. Around 8:30 p.m., a battered, barefoot young woman stumbled onto the porch of a remote farmhouse. Her clothes were torn and soaked in mud and blood. She was shaking from cold and fear, crying uncontrollably, and begging for help. The homeowner, Don Sipple, and his family had just sat down for dinner when the distressed stranger appeared, disrupting their evening. They brought her inside, wrapped her in a warm blanket, and called the police. The woman said she had been attacked, was injured, and needed medical help. She then collapsed onto the floor, curling into a ball, sobbing. She identified herself as Ezra, said someone had tried to take her life. Clearly in shock, she muttered incoherently, appeared disoriented, seemed unable to comprehend where she was or what had just happened. Repeatedly, she mumbled, "It was Alex. It was Alex, and then pleaded for someone to contact a man named Jason to tell him what had happened. When police and emergency responders arrived, Ezra was visibly distressed, in a highly agitated state. She cried out that someone wanted to hurt her, begged them not to let it happen. Her clothes were slashed and torn, her entire body appeared to be covered in blood. But after a thorough examination, paramedics discovered only shallow surface cuts, none of which were life-threatening. In fact, her blood loss was minimal, raising a disturbing question: if she wasn't seriously injured, whose blood was she covered in? Ezra avoided direct questions, blaming memory loss and trauma. She kept asking for Jason. Authorities contacted him, and he rushed to the hospital where Ezra had been taken. Still believing she had been attacked, Jason was shocked when Ezra placed the blame squarely on Alex. He embraced her and did his best to offer comfort. Ezra continued to insist that Alex had been the one who attacked her, but she claimed she couldn't remember where it had happened. She vaguely suggested it might have been somewhere near Owen Park in Eau Claire. In reality, this was a deliberate misdirection. Ezra was trying to delay the discovery of Alex's body, which was still inside her car. As she calmed down, Ezra gave police a more detailed version of events. She said she'd gone to Alex's house to talk, but he suggested they go for a drive, and she agreed. According to her, Alex dictated where she should drive, and she followed his instructions out of fear. She claimed he demanded that she return to a relationship with him, and when she refused, he became enraged. Ezra alleged that at one point, Alex forcibly grabbed the steering wheel, causing the car to veer off the road and get stuck in the mud. Then, he pulled out a knife and told her that if they couldn't be together, he had the right to one last moment of closeness. She claimed he held the knife to her throat, began tearing at her clothing. She told police she tried to fight back, but he began slicing her jeans and blouse and inflicted shallow cuts on her body. According to her, he also verbally insulted her throughout the incident. On her left forearm, investigators noted a disturbing detail: the word boy had been carved into her skin. Ezra explained that she had struggled with gender identity during her teen years, a deeply personal issue she had once shared with Alex. She believed he used that information to humiliate her in a cruel and targeted way. According to Ezra's account, while Alex was distracted, she managed to wrestle the knife from his hands and began striking out blindly, not knowing exactly where she was hitting. When Alex went still, she said she climbed out of the car and wandered aimlessly through the woods until she reached the remote farmhouse where she was eventually found and helped. Her story, however, was riddled with inconsistencies. She often contradicted herself, blamed her confusion on shock and memory loss caused by trauma. Ezra repeated the same line over and over: he wanted to hurt me and end my life. Yet without a clear crime scene or physical evidence to examine, law enforcement couldn't determine how much of her story was true. As officers began their search for the location she had described, Owen Park in Eau Claire, they came up empty. There was no sign of an altercation, no car, no blood, and no clues. The next day, investigators started from the Sipple farm and followed Ezra's barefoot tracks through the wet, muddy terrain. Eventually, in a field not far from the property, they spotted a Chevrolet Impala partially concealed in thick roadside brush. The scene they uncovered was horrific. The car's interior was drenched in blood. It coated the seats, floor, dashboard, windows, even the ceiling. Hanging out of the partially open passenger side door was the mutilated body of a young man. A large pool of blood had formed beneath him. Forensics would later count 16 deep knife wounds along with several shallow cuts. The weapon was nowhere in sight. Most of the wounds had been inflicted to the neck, chest, and groin area, severing critical arteries and resulting in rapid blood loss. The victim had continued to be attacked even after he had stopped showing signs of life. Based on the body's position, it appeared he had tried to escape the car but was blocked. Some wounds were delivered from outside the vehicle, as if the assailant was standing by the open door, preventing his exit. The weapon, a large hunting knife, was discovered in bushes about 70 feet from the car. Investigators determined the knife belonged to Ezra's father, who frequently participated in outdoor activities. This suggested Ezra had brought the knife with her, making investigators consider the possibility of premeditation. Further complicating the case, neither Ezra's nor Alex's cell phone was in the car. Both phones were found discarded in a nearby field. It appeared Ezra had taken the phones after the incident and thrown them away while fleeing. When asked about this, Ezra was unable to give a satisfactory answer. Forensic experts found extensive defensive wounds on Alex's hands, consistent with someone desperately trying to protect himself. He had even grabbed the knife blade, as evidenced by deep cuts on his fingers and palms. In contrast, Ezra's wounds were smooth, shallow. Her narrative was quickly unraveling under the weight of the physical evidence. Piecing everything together, investigators concluded that Ezra had taken the knife with her that day, already preparing for a confrontation. She had hoped Alex would help her reconcile with Jason by accepting full blame for their affair. When he refused, she enacted a far more sinister and calculated plan. The motive, according to detectives, was chilling. Ezra allegedly intended to eliminate Alex and then frame him for an attack. She would present herself to Jason as the innocent victim, with Alex portrayed as a dangerous manipulator. In her mind, Jason would believe she had been pursued and hurt, leading to a reunion between them. There was little doubt among investigators that Ezra had inflicted her own injuries deliberately and carefully. She had no bruises, no defensive wounds, and no evidence of a struggle. Even the word boy carved into her arm had been etched at an angle indicating self-infliction. Detectives believed Ezra took the phones with her in case Alex somehow survived and tried to call for help. While she had inflicted multiple fatal wounds, she wasn't a medical professional, and she couldn't be certain he was truly dead. With the physical evidence mounting against her, Ezra McCandless quickly went from being seen as a victim to becoming the prime suspect in a brutal crime. Despite the overwhelming forensic findings, she stuck to her story, firmly denying any wrongdoing. On April 6, 2018, just 2 weeks after the incident, Ezra was formally charged and taken into custody. She was indicted on charges of first-degree intentional homicide, tampering with evidence, and providing false information to investigators. The shocking nature of the case rocked the quiet town of Eau Claire, drawing significant media attention throughout the state of Wisconsin. Due to the complexity of the case and the time needed to collect and process evidence, the trial didn't begin until October 2019, approximately a year and a half after the crime. The prosecution presented a clear and compelling narrative, supported by a wealth of forensic evidence. Medical examiners emphasized that Ezra's injuries had been self-inflicted and deliberately superficial, added after the fact to support a fabricated story. Ezra's defense attorney argued that his client was dealing with significant emotional and mental health challenges, worsened by her painful breakups with Jason and Alex. He claimed that, in the moment of the crime, she was not fully aware of her actions. However, a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation directly contradicted that argument. It concluded that Ezra was of sound mind at the time of the incident, had premeditated her actions, and deliberately attempted to mislead the investigation. Inside the courtroom, Ezra broke down in tears, insisting that Alex had behaved aggressively and attacked her first, and that she had acted purely in self-defense. On November 1, 2019, Ezra McCandless was found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide with aggravating circumstances. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole only after 50 years. The judge noted that Ezra showed no remorse and expressed no regret for what had occurred during the trial. Jason Mengel took the stand as a witness. Throughout his testimony, he never once looked in Ezra's direction. Following the sentencing, he never visited her despite multiple requests from Ezra for a meeting. Jason had made his decision. He had permanently removed her from his life. She is currently incarcerated at Taycheedah Correctional Facility in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. As 2015 came to a close, Angela Diaz was filled with hope. At 30 years old, her life seemed to be on track. She was confident, optimistic, and ready for a fresh start. She had recently met someone new online, and this connection felt different. His name was Ian Diaz, a 38-year-old U.S. Marshal. Their conversations quickly progressed from lighthearted to deep and meaningful. There was undeniable chemistry between them. The two met in person on January 2, 2016. From that moment, their relationship progressed quickly. Within weeks, Angela and Ian grew closer, moved in together, and soon got engaged. They married not long after and seemed happy, deeply in love, and focused on building a future together. Shortly after their wedding, Angela found out she was pregnant with twins, which made her feel as if all her dreams were coming true. Angela worked at a law firm, while Ian had built a stable career in law enforcement. Living in Anaheim, California, their life appeared perfect on the outside. However, that perfect image fell apart just months later. On the night of June 24, 2016, Angela came home as usual. She parked her car in the garage, but as she stepped out, a stranger suddenly appeared. Without warning, he charged at her. Angela fell to the ground, screaming in terror and trying to shield herself. Although she managed to escape serious injury, she was left shaken, bruised, and with her blouse torn. What scared Angela most wasn't the physical assault but the realization that the attack seemed premeditated. Someone had deliberately targeted her. She immediately called the police, already suspecting who might be behind it. While she didn't recognize her attacker, she believed she knew who had orchestrated the assault. For weeks leading up to the attack, Angela had been receiving disturbing anonymous emails. These messages were filled with threats, religious references, and violent language. The harassment allegedly started on May 29, when Angela received an email stating that the sender hoped she was scared of the following day. The sender referred to herself as his princess, insulted Angela by calling her nothing, and warned her to watch her back. Shortly after, another message, written entirely in capital letters, was allegedly sent via LinkedIn, stating that Michelle was his one and only true love and that Angela was nothing to him. Michelle Hadley was Ian's ex-girlfriend. Their relationship had ended badly, marred by emotional fights and unresolved financial disputes. They had purchased a condo together and shared a mortgage, but their breakup had left them entangled in a bitter struggle over the property. At some point, Ian began receiving strange emails from Michelle as well. These messages, which initially expressed anger, gradually became more alarming. They contained religious imagery and threats, which unsettled Ian. He forwarded the emails to the police and his colleagues in law enforcement. He even applied for a restraining order against Michelle, citing her emotional instability and previous outbursts, but his request was denied. When Angela began receiving similar threats, she and Ian were convinced Michelle was responsible. Angela took legal action and applied for her own restraining order. She explained that she had never responded to the harassment, had blocked each email address, yet the messages kept coming from new accounts. On June 1, 2016, the court granted Michelle a restraining order, prohibiting her from contacting or having contact with Angela as required by law. Michelle was notified of the order via email. Afterward, law enforcement began treating the case more seriously. Just days later, officers went to Michelle's home to serve the restraining order in person, outlining the legal boundaries she now had to follow. For Angela and Ian, it felt like progress had finally been made. They allowed themselves a moment of relief, hoping that the harassment would finally stop. But their sense of safety was short-lived. About a week later, Angela and Ian's peace was abruptly disrupted by a knock on their door. When they opened it, they found a stranger standing outside. The man appeared calm, yet there was something unsettling about him. He said he came to see Angela, saying he was invited to help satisfy her deepest desires. Confused and alarmed, Angela and Ian listened as the man explained that he had responded to a Craigslist ad. The ad described a specific role-play scenario designed to resemble a violent, non-consensual encounter, though it suggested Angela would secretly welcome it. Horrified, Angela and Ian told the man that he was mistaken. He apologized and left, but the damage was already done. Someone had used Angela's identity online to post the ad, inviting strangers into her home, and the situation was far from over. Later that evening, while they were in their garage, things took a terrifying turn. Another man showed up at their home, but this time, he didn't knock or try to explain himself. Instead, he immediately lunged at Angela, as though following explicit instructions. She managed to escape unharmed, but the attack left her deeply shaken. Shortly after, the ad responsible for the incidents was discovered. It had been posted using Angela's name, photo, and home address. The post instructed men to go to her house and warn them that she might resist, but they were to proceed anyway. The ad was horrifying, violating Angela's privacy and putting her life, and the lives of her unborn twins, in grave danger. In the days that followed, more men came forward. Some had responded to similar ads but backed away once they realized the situation was real. Others, however, had arrived ready to act on what they believed to be a fantasy. Ian was furious. Being continuously harassed, receiving threats of violence, and facing indifference from authorities pushed him into a state of despair. He publicly voiced his anger, demanding that Michelle, the person he believed responsible, be arrested and jailed immediately. Eventually, law enforcement took action. After the garage attack, investigators obtained a warrant and arrested Michelle. Her devices, including her phone, laptop, and iPad, were seized for examination. Although her family posted bail and secured her release, the harassment continued. Angela received more threatening messages, and strangers kept showing up at her house. From the beginning, Michelle denied any involvement. When she was first informed about the restraining order, she expressed confusion, insisting she had never spoken to Angela and had nothing to do with the threats, emails, or Craigslist ads. Michelle claimed she was being impersonated and even revealed that she had received unusual messages herself. However, investigators dismissed her claims, convinced that she was the perpetrator. Then, another incident occurred. A 17-year-old boy showed up at Angela's house after responding to an online ad. Fortunately, Angela saw him before anything could happen and immediately called the police. The boy explained he thought he was answering an invitation similar to the earlier posts and had no idea the person in the photos wasn't the one who created them. The next day, on July 14th, Michelle was arrested again. This time, the case was treated with much greater urgency. Prosecutors described her as a threat to public safety, and her bail was set at $1 million. The charges against her were severe. Not only had Angela endured repeated threats and attacks, but her pregnancy with twins made the situation even more dire. Michelle's family was devastated. They believed in her innocence but didn't have the financial means to continue paying for her release. Michelle chose to remain in custody, putting her remaining resources toward her legal defense. Due to the seriousness of the case, Michelle was held in a high-security unit under strict monitoring. While she had not physically harmed Angela, authorities were convinced she had orchestrated the attacks, making her a dangerous individual. The weeks that followed were brutal. Inside jail, Michelle was treated with suspicion and contempt. Other inmates saw her as a snitch or an informant. She was targeted, harassed, and routinely assigned the worst jobs, scrubbing toilets, cleaning filthy corners, and enduring verbal abuse from both inmates and staff. The harsh environment was a far cry from the structured academic life she had always known. Michelle had grown up in Ontario, California, raised in a conservative household. Her parents owned a small business and instilled in her traditional values. She wasn't drawn to parties or attention. Instead, she found comfort in books and quiet places. Her passion was medieval history, and she eventually earned a degree in the field, devoting herself to studying the intricacies of the Middle Ages. At 22, she married her high school sweetheart, but the relationship didn't last. By the time she turned 26, they had divorced. It was after that, in 2011, that Michelle met Ian Diaz, 6 years her senior. The two connected on a dating website, exchanged a few messages, and eventually met for coffee. Ian was charming, well-spoken, and quickly became enamored with Michelle. His friends would later describe her as the ideal partner, brilliant, beautiful, and grounded. Ian told everyone she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Their relationship progressed quickly. In late 2014, Ian proposed during a trip to New York. They began planning a wedding for February 2016. In the meantime, they adopted a dog and began looking for a place to live. Eventually, they settled on a unit in a brand new complex in Anaheim's Southern District. The apartment cost just under $469,000. Michelle paid a $14,000 down payment, and together they applied for a loan to cover the rest. From the outside, their life looked idyllic. But behind closed doors, the cracks were already forming. Ian slowly began to assert control. At first, it was subtle. Michelle worked in the marketing department of a large insurance company, but Ian insisted the job was too stressful. He persuaded her to leave, offering instead to help her land a position as a project manager at Disneyland, where he had connections. He began encouraging Michelle to change her appearance, more makeup, tighter clothes, longer nails. He wanted her to get a belly button piercing. He bought her a new phone, tablet, and laptop under the pretense of generosity. Though Michelle later suspected he used them to track her, he called constantly, demanded updates on her whereabouts, and interrupted her sleep regularly with demands for attention. When Michelle decided to pursue a Master of Business Administration, Ian was unhappy and insisted on studying with her. When he was unable to do so, he began to make things difficult for her, leading to arguments, delays, and even disruptions to her study schedule. As time passed, Ian's expectations became more disturbing. He forces Michelle to engage in intimate acts that she finds extremely uncomfortable, specifically being with another man while he watches. Michelle refused. She made it clear she wouldn't tolerate those demands. She warned Ian that if he continued pressuring her, the relationship would not survive. But Ian dismissed her concerns, claiming she was exaggerating. At work, she regularly received explicit messages from him, including links to adult videos, often while she was in meetings or working. Then came Valentine's Day 2014. Michelle was sick that evening, battling a cold and taking medication. Ian began pressuring her again, insisting she fulfill one of his fantasies. Drained and desperate to end the conversation, Michelle gave in. What followed left a lasting scar. Ian posted an ad on Craigslist inviting a stranger to their home. He mixed Michelle 3 strong drinks despite knowing she was unwell and medicated. Then, as the stranger arrived, Ian set up a hidden camera and retreated to the bathroom, watching from behind a closed door. The next morning, Michelle was devastated. She told Ian that she felt used, violated, and ashamed. She begged him to delete the footage. Ian, unmoved, insisted that everything had been consensual. Their relationship spiraled from there. After one heated argument, Ian pulled the car over in the middle of a busy road and forced Michelle to get out because she hadn't, in his words, shown him respect. They tried therapy, but it failed after one session. When Michelle brought up the traumatic Valentine's incident, Ian exploded. He became so enraged that he drove recklessly around the city, refusing to let her out of the vehicle. He threatened to crash the car and kill them both. Michelle was trapped in a relationship that looked safe from the outside, but was deeply toxic, invasive, and emotionally abusive from within. By August 2015, Michelle had reached her breaking point. The constant pressure, fear, and manipulation from Ian had become unbearable, and she decided to leave. He responded with brutal revenge. He destroyed her belongings, canceled her car insurance, and sent threatening messages that his friends might come to her work, school, or home. Despite the threats, Michelle tried to start over. She found a new job, re-enrolled in school, and tried to rebuild her life. One unresolved issue was the apartment they had purchased together. Both their names were on the mortgage, and a legal resolution was required. In November 2015, they reached an agreement. Ian would pay Michelle $3,000 and assume full responsibility for the mortgage by June 5, 2016. If he failed to meet these terms, the apartment would be sold, and the proceeds split. However, none of this was disclosed to the Anaheim Police Department, not to the detectives, prosecutors, or officers handling the harassment investigation. Michelle was later jailed for more than 2.5 months. Frustrated and desperate for answers, her family began reviewing the evidence themselves. They discovered troubling inconsistencies in the timeline. Emails attributed to Michelle had been sent while she was either in class or hospitalized. The timestamps didn't align with her whereabouts. Then, the story took a shocking twist. Ian, the same man whose testimony had helped build the case against Michelle, came forward with a confession. Ian told police he now believed Michelle was innocent and that his current wife, Angela Diaz, had orchestrated the entire scheme. He admitted that one of the threatening emails tied to Michelle was sent from an account he had created. While he claimed he hadn't sent the message himself, he suspected Angela had used the account without his knowledge. Ian also revealed that Angela had lied to him about being pregnant. The ultrasound images she had shown him were fake, purchased on Etsy, where such items can be customized. Angela's deceit didn't end there. She had also falsely claimed to be a licensed attorney and a law school graduate, neither of which was true. More disturbing details about her past began to surface. Angela's ex-boyfriend Jason, a police officer, had been tricked into believing she had cervical cancer. Angela moved in with Jason and his son, even shaving her head and taking pictures at clinics to fake her lies. Yet, she showed none of the physical symptoms of chemotherapy. She drank wine, maintained her weight, and continued her normal lifestyle. Jason eventually grew suspicious. A friend followed Angela on a day she claimed to have a doctor's appointment, only to discover she never left the house. Jason reverse-searched one of the photos she had sent him and found it was taken from the internet. When confronted, Angela refused to provide medical documentation or show a port catheter, which is typical for cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy. It was then that the truth unraveled. Angela did not have cancer. Jason ended the relationship. Back in Anaheim, authorities executed a search warrant and seized Angela's phone and laptop. The evidence they uncovered was damning. On January 6, 2017, Angela was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, forgery, perjury, theft, and filing false police reports. The case against Michelle collapsed completely, as Angela used a VPN to send threatening emails and impersonated Michelle multiple times to cover her tracks. While the police investigated, the damage was already done. The alleged garage attack, a key aspect of Angela's claims, never happened. Home surveillance footage showed no intruder on the night in question. It appeared Angela had injured herself to fabricate the story, but the police failed to review the footage during their initial investigation. Throughout the investigation, Angela maintained her innocence, even smiling during the process. Eventually, she accepted a plea deal, admitting guilt and receiving a 5-year prison sentence, a surprisingly lenient punishment considering Michelle had nearly faced life imprisonment. Angela is now free and has since divorced Ian. Michelle was fully exonerated only after Angela's conviction. Even then, the moment felt bittersweet. The district attorney's office delayed issuing a public acknowledgement, forcing Michelle to demand that they disclose the truth or risk exposure. A press conference was eventually held, during which officials admitted to the miscarriage of justice, praised the investigation, and officially classified Michelle as the victim of a calculated scheme. From the very beginning, Michelle had been cooperative, repeatedly warning authorities that someone was impersonating her. She made daily calls to the police, urging them to trace the IP addresses behind the emails, but her pleas were ignored. She also flagged fraudulent Craigslist ads that Angela had posted and begged for their removal, only to be met with persistent failures by the system. Even after Angela confessed, Michelle remained convinced that Ian had played a role. Michelle's arrest coincided suspiciously with the same week Ian failed to meet court requirements to take over the apartment mortgage. Investigators eventually linked many of the threatening emails and Craigslist ads to IP addresses from Ian and Angela's home. Not only had Angela used the home network, but Ian had as well. Ian sent some of the incriminating messages using his work phone, personal phone, and laptop. Once their plan unraveled, Ian attempted to shift the blame entirely onto Angela. He changed his phone number, deleted email accounts, and tried to portray himself as a whistleblower. However, these actions failed to clear his name. Ian Diaz was ultimately charged with cyberstalking, conspiracy, perjury, and obstruction of justice. In 2023, he was sentenced to 10 years and 1 month in federal prison. In 2018, Michelle filed a federal lawsuit against Ian, Angela, the city of Anaheim, and the Anaheim Police Department, accusing them of false imprisonment and civil rights violations. By 2021, the lawsuit was settled for undisclosed terms. Today, Michelle has rebuilt her life. She completed a master's degree in business administration, began her career in the marketing industry, started her own business, and moved to New York, leaving behind her past in California. Recently, she welcomed her first child, a daughter. It was just another Friday afternoon in Recoleta, one of the nicest neighborhoods in Buenos Aires. Magali Yael Levy had dropped off her kids at school, as she always did, and returned home. A woman was scheduled to arrive around noon to help with the housework, but shortly after that woman walked through the door, everything changed. Later that day, police found Magali's apartment in complete disarray, things were thrown around, and some valuables were missing. But what they found in a bedroom was worse than anyone could have imagined. Magali, just 28 years old, was dead. At first, it looked like a robbery gone wrong, but the truth ran much deeper. This is the story of Magali Yael Levy, a young mother, a teacher, and a trusted neighbor whose final moments raised questions that still haven't been fully answered. Magali was born in 1977 in Buenos Aires, Argentina. She was raised in a middle-class Jewish family where she learned about tradition, community, and order. Her parents, Ileana Emilia Cheo and Adrian Leon Levy, taught her the importance of faith and discipline, which would influence her life as a young adult. From an early age, Magali was known for her dedication to education and an innate desire to help others. She attended a renowned bilingual Jewish school located. There, she not only absorbed knowledge but also developed a deep respect for Jewish teachings and heritage. After high school, she went to university to study labor relations. This field appealed to her because she was empathetic and interested in social dynamics. During her studies, she realized she wanted to be a teacher. After graduating, she returned to her old high school, but this time as a teacher, not a student. Magali was a well-loved teacher and colleague because of her calm nature, friendly personality, and approachable attitude. She was the type of teacher students would remember fondly for years after being in her class, a teacher who truly listened, paid attention, and cared about them. Magali followed her Jewish faith and married Alberto Yoel Arazzi, who shared her beliefs. They created a home in Recoleta, a wealthy and beautiful area of Buenos Aires. Their 2 children filled their home with joy, and they seemed to have a wonderful life. At 28, Magali had what many people wanted: a devoted husband, happy children, and a supportive community. Although Magali seemed calm, she was struggling. Being a mother, a teacher, and managing a home was exhausting her. As her responsibilities increased, she realized she needed help. In early 2005, Magali started looking for a reliable housekeeper to assist her during the week and bring some order back to her life. One of Magali's friends received a message from someone who said they knew a young woman seeking domestic work. She wanted to assist Magali, so she gave Magali the young woman's contact information. At the time, Magali didn't realize that the kind referral she received was actually a deliberate part of a sinister plot. Magali contacted the woman by phone. They spoke briefly and arranged a meeting for Wednesday, March 5th, at Magali's apartment in Recoleta. Unbeknownst to Magali, opening her door that morning wasn't an act of welcoming help, it was walking directly into a trap. Magali scheduled a trial day for the new maid, who calls herself Emilsa, to assess her skills and reliability. This was a preliminary step, seemingly routine. Security cameras at Magali's apartment complex recorded Emilsa's arrival at the gate. She called Magali to request access. Magali then came down from the building, greeted Emilsa warmly, and led her through the courtyard to her second-floor apartment. The day seemed normal at first. Emilsa completed her tasks and left on time. However, Magali felt uneasy. People close to Magali later said she wasn't completely happy with Emilsa. Magali wanted to find someone better, so she arranged an interview with another person. But that person didn't come. Because Magali was busy and needed help quickly, she contacted Emilsa again. She urgently needed assistance and asked Emilsa to come back on Friday, March 7th. That morning started as usual. Magali woke up before sunrise to get her children ready for school. Her husband, Alberto, left for work soon after, he dropping the kids off on the way. Magali went back home to wait for Emilsa, who was scheduled to arrive around noon. Emilsa would clean the house, and later, Magali would pick up the children for lunch. Around noon, the same woman showed up on the security cameras again at the complex. This time, the entrance gate was unlocked. She walked right in and went upstairs without notifying anyone. About an hour later, a young man arrived and waited near the entrance. When an elderly woman entered with her dog, he followed her closely, pretending to live there. That afternoon, something strange happened. Alberto received a call from his children's school. Magali, his wife, hadn't picked them up. This was very unusual because she was always on time. Alberto tried calling and texting Magali, but she didn't answer. He then called her parents, but they hadn't heard from her either. No one knew where Magali was. Increasingly worried, Alberto left work. He asked Magali's parents to get the children from school and rushed home to their apartment. As soon as he opened the door, he sensed something awful had happened. The apartment was a disaster. Furniture was knocked over, drawers were open and empty, and their belongings were strewn all over the place. But the disarray wasn't the worst of it. Inside their home, he found Magali's lifeless body. Her wrists and ankles were tied, tape covered her mouth, and a plastic bag was pulled over her head. She was cold and motionless. Shaking, Alberto called 911. Help arrived swiftly. Local police and paramedics were on the scene within minutes. Magali was pronounced dead at the scene. At first, investigators thought it was a home invasion that had gone wrong. There was evidence of forced entry and theft. Her cell phone and a small wall safe were missing, suggesting the burglars were unable to open it at the apartment and took it with them. Magali's condition revealed a disturbing story that went beyond simple robbery. Detectives believed her attackers subjected her to severe mental and physical torture, attempting to extract the safe's combination. Despite the intense pressure, she refused to cooperate. Her body was immediately transported to the city morgue for a full forensic examination. While police remained at the apartment collecting every trace of evidence, they dusted for fingerprints, photographed every room, and carefully sealed items for analysis, hoping something would help identify those responsible. The preliminary autopsy report was chilling. Magali had been assaulted and then killed using a dual method of suffocation. First, a plastic bag had been placed over her head. Then, a second mechanism, possibly manual pressure, had ensured she couldn't breathe. Her wrists and ankles had been tied. There were bruises on her body. Defensive wounds indicated she fought back until the very end. On the night of March 8th, the day after the attack, Magali's family and friends gathered to mourn her. They held a funeral service and a traditional Jewish ceremony to say goodbye. The community was shocked and united in grief. While her loved ones mourned, the media covered the story extensively, with news outlets across Argentina reporting on it. Initial headlines described the murder as a violent robbery. However, some reports focused on Magali's religion, suggesting, without proof, that it might have been a hate crime. Amid the investigation into the controversial case, law enforcement struggled to piece together Magali's last movements. They needed to determine who she spoke with that morning, who visited her home, and, most importantly, the true reason for her murder. Authorities classified the case as a homicide related to a robbery. Investigators moved swiftly, interviewing neighbors, family members, and friends. Every angle was considered. Surveillance footage from the apartment complex and nearby streets became key. What they uncovered confirmed their worst fears: The only strangers seen entering the building that day were the woman who had presented herself as a housekeeper and a young man who slipped in behind another resident. Both were caught on external cameras leaving the building around 1:30 p.m., just after Magali was murdered. Each was carrying a bag. Authorities believed those bags held the stolen safe and other valuables from the apartment. This wasn't a crime of opportunity, it was a coordinated operation. The woman and her male accomplice were identified as members of a violent criminal gang. Police believe that once inside, the woman subdued Magali and then allowed her partner to enter. Together, they attempted to extract the safe's code through intimidation and force. When Magali refused, they killed her. Investigators suspect that more than 2 people were involved in planning and carrying out the attack. To find them, they reviewed a large amount of security camera footage and compared it with information from Magali's social media and online activity. A key piece of information came from the beginning: a 29-year-old woman named Elcira Jimenez Gonzalez. Police say she suggested the supposed housekeeper to Magali's friend. This connection seems to have started the chain of events. Elcira reportedly did more than just provide a name. She is suspected of arranging the way the attackers gained access to Magali's life. The woman who had infiltrated Magali's house under the false name Emilsa was identified as Diana, just 26 years old. Her mission had been precise and chilling: to survey the apartment under the guise of domestic help and take mental note of valuables. During that first visit, she located the safe, the centerpiece of what was about to become a brutal, fatal heist. Diana was not acting alone. Among the list of suspects was Sixto Fabian Araujo Amarilla, 30, Elcira's husband. He was already known to police, reportedly tied to the drug trade in one of Buenos Aires' most dangerous and crime-ridden neighborhoods. It turned out that Sixto and Elcira rented an apartment just 10 blocks away from Magali's home in Recoleta. That address would soon be revealed as a criminal hideout. The man who had entered Magali's building alongside Diana on the day of the murder was soon identified as Iván Jiménez González, just 20 years old and Elcira's younger brother. He was soon named the main suspect, believed to be the individual who physically carried out the killing. To track the suspect's movements before, during, and after the crime, investigators used various intelligence methods. These included geolocation tracking, mobile antenna triangulation, and analysis of call logs and messaging histories for everyone involved. Security footage from a local store showed Diana buying ropes, adhesive tape, and other materials believed to be used to restrain and gag Magali days before the murder. More disturbingly, she also purchased candles, suggesting a ritualistic element to the crime that investigators hadn't anticipated. According to police findings, after murdering Magali, the suspects regrouped at their hideout and broke open the stolen safe. Inside, they found approximately $6,000 in cash and several valuable items, which they divided among themselves. They then immediately fled Argentina, heading for Paraguay. Argentine authorities promptly issued international arrest warrants and, with the help of Interpol, launched a cross-border manhunt. Reports later revealed that once in Paraguay, the suspects sought refuge in San Pedro del Parana, a remote area known for its isolation and local superstitions. On Thursday, April 3, 2025, a breakthrough finally came. In a coordinated raid, officers stormed San Pedro del Parana and arrested Iván Jiménez González, the man accused of murdering Magali. The arrest marked a major turning point in the case. In another raid at a separate family member's home, investigators found a sports bag, shoes, documents, and several items suspected to have belonged to Magali. Following his arrest, Devon was placed in preventive detention under the authority of a national criminal court, awaiting extradition to Argentina. International arrest warrants remained active for the rest of the group. As Devon sat in custody, facing extradition to Argentina, his words began to unravel the full scope of the crime. In a confession reportedly given to Paraguayan police, Iván revealed the dark mechanics of the criminal ring he and his sister belonged to. Alongside Elcira and Diana, they had formed a team that specialized in residential burglaries across Buenos Aires. Their method was disturbingly calculated. Diana would pose as a domestic worker, gain the trust of homeowners, and when the time was right, allow her accomplices inside to rob the place. But something went terribly wrong in the apartment of Magali. Their target had been the safe, believing it held a large sum of cash. When Magali refused to give up the code, the situation escalated. After the crime, they transported the stolen safe to their hideout apartment, where they cracked it open using a grinder. Inside, they found around $6,000 in cash, along with valuables, spoils they divided before fleeing Argentina. While Yvonne now sat in custody, 3 others remained at large: Diana, Elcira, and Sixto. Investigators made progress by tracking a SIM card change to an isolated area near San Pedro del Parana. Information indicated that Elcira and Sixto were hiding in a region controlled by banned substance traffickers. The manhunt remained active. International alerts remained in place. The case, still under the jurisdiction of Argentina's National Criminal and Correctional Prosecutor's Office, continued to advance with support from Paraguayan law enforcement. The investigators also looked into whether this criminal group committed other similar robberies in Buenos Aires. These robberies involved the theft of cash, jewelry, and electronics. In most of these cases, the victims survived. However, the robbery of Magali was different and tragic. She was only 28 years old, a mother, wife, and teacher with a future. She had trusted someone enough to let them into her home, and this trust cost her her life. Her murder added to the growing statistics of violent deaths of women in Buenos Aires during the early months of 2025. According to reports from the Specialized Prosecutorial Unit on Gender-Based Violence, 17 similar homicides have been registered in 2024 alone. Magali's name became another line on a tragic list, but her case stood out for its cruelty, its orchestration, and its breach of domestic safety. The distressing call reporting a death shattered the tranquility of a suburb in North Carolina. The victim was identified as Nabaruna Karmakar, a talented engineer from Kolkata remembered for her intelligence and kindness. She was found dead under suspicious circumstances. Nabaruna Karmakar grew up in Behala, a lively and culturally rich area in southwest Kolkata. Even as a child, she was known for her strong academic abilities and quiet focus. Her father, Tapan Karmakar, worked as a general manager at the Steel Authority of India Limited. Her mother, Sipra, took care of the home. Raised in a joint family, Nabaruna learned the importance of discipline, humility, and a love of learning. These values greatly influenced her life. She attended Vidyabharati School, where teachers considered her an excellent student. She excelled in science and mathematics because of her interest in these subjects and her organized way of solving problems. With the support of her family and inspired by her father's engineering career, she decided to study industrial engineering at Manipal University, a top private university in India. Nabaruna excelled in her studies while staying connected to her upbringing. During holidays, she went back home to take part in Durga Puja, savor homemade food, and spend time with family, friends. People often described her as calm, generous, and intellectually curious. She loved Rabindra Sangeet and Bengali food, which helped her maintain her identity, even as she prepared to live abroad. Getting accepted into a PhD program at North Carolina State University was a major achievement. Although it meant leaving home, she was excited and thankful for the opportunity. Her parents were anxious but completely supported her goals. They stayed in touch through video calls, sharing news and providing support from afar. Even after moving to the US, Nabaruna kept strong ties to Behala. She visited whenever she could, kept in contact with old friends, and remained involved in family matters. Those who knew her said that despite her success, she never forgot her roots. Nabaruna earned her degree from Manipal University before moving to the United States to study at North Carolina State University in Raleigh. There, she entered the PhD program in industrial engineering, soon became known for her strong analytical skills and organized research methods. Although adapting to a new country was challenging, Nabaruna adjusted well. She managed her research and teaching duties carefully, earning the respect of professors and students alike. Outside of school, she stayed connected to a close group of Indian students. Together, they celebrated Indian festivals and preserved Bengali culture through food, music, and stories from home. After finishing her PhD, she got a job at SAS Institute in Cary, North Carolina. At SAS, a well-known data analytics software company, she had challenging analytical jobs. Her co-workers said she was accurate, concentrated, and reliable. People valued her skills, her ability to work well with others. She did well at work and created a peaceful, consistent personal life. She stayed in touch with her parents and made time for cultural activities when she could. While not very social, she was well regarded and liked by her close colleagues. In December 2019, Nabaruna came back to Kolkata to marry Michael Aaron Matthews, an American. They had a traditional Hindu wedding with family and friends. Pictures show Nabaruna wearing a red sari and smiling with her parents and husband. Her family was happy for her, hoping this marriage would bring her personal fulfillment in addition to her successful career. After their wedding, Nabaruna and Michael made their home in Morrisville, North Carolina, a peaceful suburb of Raleigh. They lived in a house on Seagrave Place, in a neighborhood of similar houses. The area was safe and close to tech companies like SAS, where Nabaruna worked. They also had a dog, Ralphie, who Nabaruna loved very much. Neighbors remember Nabaruna and Michael kept to themselves, didn't socialize much. Nabaruna would sometimes exchange greetings with neighbors while walking. She continued to work full-time in SAS and regularly contacted her family in Kolkata. She shared updates about her home life, photos of meals, short videos of Ralphie, and had brief calls about everyday things with her parents. Friends noticed that Nabaruna became more socially withdrawn after getting married, though she remained dedicated to her job and cultural identity. She attended community events less often, and when she did, she often came alone and left early. She seemed to be growing more emotionally distant. Nabaruna and Michael was saddened by the death of their dog, Ralphie. Those close to Nabaruna said she was deeply affected by the loss. She had a strong emotional bond with Ralphie, and his death seemed to change her. Friends recalled that she became quieter during this time, although she remained dedicated to her work and family. Even though Nabaruna and Michael seemed fine and there were no obvious problems or signs of trouble at home, they were facing some underlying emotional stress. Nabaruna's parents and co-workers thought she was a calm, responsible woman, and no one suspected she was in any immediate danger. On April 14, 2023, Michael called 911 from his home on Seagrave Place in Morrisville and reported that Nabaruna had taken her own life. When police arrived, they found Nabaruna dead in a small office. She had been shot twice, once in the back of the head and once in her left temple. Her arm was resting on an urn believed to contain her dog's ashes. A suicide note was found near her body. The room smelled strongly of gasoline, and the gas can was also present. Bullet casings, a gun, and other items in the room were arranged in a way that initially suggested a mutual end to her own life. However, investigators soon found inconsistencies with this theory. The angles of the gunshot wounds, the lack of gunshot residue on Nabaruna's hands, and the careful arrangement of objects raised suspicions. Within hours, police began investigating the case as a homicide. Security camera footage from a Bass Pro shop showed Michael buying a handgun, ammunition, a fuel container, and zip ties on April 13, the day before the incident. The handgun was confirmed as the murder weapon because it matched the bullets found at the crime scene. Michael did not have a registered gun license, and the suicide note raised concerns. Forensic linguistics experts analyzed the note and determined that the vocabulary and sentence structure were inconsistent with Nabaruna's usual writing style. The note was typed and unsigned, whereas she typically wrote notes by hand. Furthermore, digital analysis revealed no indication that she created the file on any of her electronic devices. The medical examiner's autopsy determined the death was a homicide. The bullet wound to the back of the head ruled out and her own life. Toxicology reports showed no banned substance or sedatives in her system, disproving the theory that she was drugged or involved in her own death. Police noted that Michael waited several hours before calling emergency services, potentially to stage the scene. Investigators found a tarp and extra zip ties in the garage, suggesting the murder was planned. Gasoline was present inside the house but unused, likely to mislead first responders into believing a larger plan had failed. After the autopsy results confirmed foul play, Michael was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The news deeply affected the community and Nabaruna's family in Kolkata, India. They were devastated. The case against Michael was built on forensic science, digital evidence, and a reconstructed timeline. After authorities changed the classification of the April 14 incident to a homicide, prosecutors and investigators started gathering evidence to show Michael had planned the crime. Key evidence included security footage from a Bass Pro shop on April 13. This timing matched the period when investigators believed he was planning the crime. The autopsy revealed that Nabaruna was likely killed by a shot to the back of her head. This wound was probably the first and fatal one. Experts determined that she could not have shot herself because of the angle of the bullet and the absence of gunpowder residue at close range. A second shot to her temple, though damaging, also appeared to be from someone else. Both wounds suggest she was murdered at close range. The suicide note, found near Nabaruna's body, was typed and unsigned. Further investigation revealed that the note was created and printed from a device used by Michael, not Nabaruna's computer. The digital evidence went beyond the note. Investigators examined Michael's internet search history and found disturbing searches from the days before April 14, including how to shoot someone and make it look like end one's own life, gasoline explosion setup, and how long does gun residue stay on hands. These searches strongly indicated that Michael planned the murder and researched ways to make it look like something else. Court documents filed by prosecutors described the scene at Nabaruna's home. Her body's position, an urn containing the ashes of her dead dog placed nearby, and a gas can left by the door suggested a carefully staged scene. Furthermore, an unused tarp and additional zip ties found in the garage implied that Michael had considered other, possibly more elaborate, plans before carrying out the one discovered. The prosecution successfully argued that the death was a planned murder made to look like a end one's own life. Michael's access to weapons and tools made the crime possible, his intentions were obvious, and his attempts to cover it up worsened his legal situation, convincing the court of his guilt. Tapan and Sipra went to the United States. Even though the American culture and legal system were new to them, they wanted to understand what happened and make sure their daughter's story was told correctly. They stayed with friends and supporters for months, going to hearings, talking to lawyers, and following the case closely. Being in the courtroom showed how strong they were. Even though they were grieving, they stayed calm, determined. After Nabaruna's story touched people worldwide, the Indian American community started a GoFundMe campaign to help her family with travel and legal costs. The Karmakars then became champions for their daughter's memory, raising awareness about domestic abuse and gun access. They shared their experience with local news outlets and groups. Although they didn't start their own public campaign, their dignified response to tragedy inspired many. Tapan and Sipra emphasized that seeking justice for Nabaruna was not about revenge, but about uncovering the truth. Clearing their daughter's name was just as crucial to them as ensuring the killer was punished. The investigation revealed details about Nabaruna's life in the months leading up to her death through testimonies from her friends, colleagues, and community members. A close friend and colleague at SAS provided important testimony. She stated that Nabaruna had confided in her about growing verbal arguments at home. While Nabaruna never explicitly spoke of physical abuse, she did express feeling emotionally drained and unsure about her marriage. The doctor added that Nabaruna had started researching legal options and had considered separating from her husband. Nabaruna's co-workers noticed a change in her behavior over time. She used to be friendly and involved, but she became more quiet in meetings and stopped going to social events. Her emails were still professional, but she interacted with people less. One team leader said Nabaruna declined a leadership position because she said she had personal distractions. People in the North Carolina Indian community also saw changes in her. She used to go to Bengali cultural events and community prayers, but she hadn't been seen at any in the months before she died. Some people remembered that she often came alone, left early, and didn't chat or talk about her personal life. Investigators examined Navaruna's private messages, including texts and drafts of emails. They found no explicit threats or obvious signs of danger. However, some messages indicated she was stressed. While not direct proof of abuse, these messages pointed to a tense home environment. Michael Aaron Matthews was charged with first-degree murder, leading to a legal case against him. Wake County prosecutors were ready for a trial that would present disturbing evidence and a thorough investigation of the manipulated crime scene. Leading up to the trial, the defense and prosecution discussed a plea agreement for Michael. He risked a life sentence if found guilty of first-degree murder. On May 19, 2025, Michael pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. The court accepted the plea under North Carolina's sentencing guidelines. Michael Aaron Matthews was sentenced to 13 years to 16 years in prison, with credit for time served. This agreement prevented a lengthy trial and secured a conviction, avoiding potential appeals or jury issues. The judge confirmed that Michael entered the plea willingly and that it aligned with the investigation's findings. The courtroom was quiet during the hearing. Michael did not apologize or make a statement. Tupun and Cipra, who were present, stated that while the sentence didn't fully compensate for their loss, the guilty plea was a crucial step towards finding closure. Some legal experts believed it was a smart move that protected the victim's family from further pain. Others worried that the lesser charge didn't reflect the premeditation and deceit involved. Nabaruna Karmakar's vibrant life, marked by intellectual brilliance and deep cultural roots, was tragically ended, leaving an irreplaceable void in the hearts of her family and community. Brisbane, Australia, is a vibrant city with a population of over 2.5 million residents. It is home to the Brisbane River, numerous parks, iconic landmarks, and stunning beaches. The city frequently hosts social events and festivals that draw visitors from around the globe. However, for the locals, Brisbane is primarily known as a hub for higher education, with several prestigious institutions scattered across the city. These include the Queensland University of Technology, the University of Queensland, and Griffith University, where, in March 2014, 21-year-old Sophie Collenbet was a student. Sophie, from Saint Julien, a small town in France, is ambitious and dedicated to her studies and career goals. In France, she had attended the University of Savoy-Mont Blanc, where she pursued her interest in languages and international business. Proficient in both German and English, Sophie excelled academically. After 2 years of study, she was accepted into an exchange program and received a student visa in February 2013. Fueled by enthusiasm and determination, Sophie left France shortly thereafter to begin her studies at Griffith University in Brisbane, where she majored in economics and business. She came from a loving and moderately affluent family, with 2 brothers, Lionel and Guillaume. She deeply missed her family after moving away, as they shared a close bond. She also broke up with her boyfriend, but the two still keep in touch from a distance and believe this temporary sacrifice is worth it for her to focus on her studies and build her future. Sophie dreamed of completing her studies, starting a family with her boyfriend, and eventually running her own business. In Brisbane, she formed close friendships with her classmates, and her boyfriend frequently visited her from France. With her parents' support, Sophie was able to manage her finances. She worked part-time as a waitress during weekends and occasionally tutored French to supplement her income. Thanks to her careful budgeting, she was able to rent a small apartment on the outskirts of Brisbane and even save money for a visit to France during the upcoming summer holidays in June 2014. She had last seen her loved ones during the New Year holidays and was eager to reunite with them. On Thursday, March 27, 2014, Sophie had evening lectures scheduled at Griffith University from 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. She attended class with a friend and used her tablet to take notes. After the lecture, They left the campus around 9 p.m. and walked to a nearby bus stop while chatting about their weekend plans. Sophie boarded the bus with her friend, but after a few stops, they parted ways, leaving Sophie to continue her journey alone. Later that evening, surveillance cameras captured Sophie as she got off the bus at her stop. The weather was stormy, with strong winds and rain, so she carried an umbrella. Since the bus route did not directly reach her destination, she decided to walk a few stops to save time rather than wait for another bus. At around 9:30 p.m., another camera recorded her walking past the Queensland Art Gallery. She then crossed a bridge over the Brisbane River and arrived near the entrance of a local park. To get to her rented apartment, Sophie needed to pass through the park, which appeared dark and empty at that hour. Her apartment was only 10 to 15 minutes away. Tragically, since Sophie lived alone, no one noticed that she never left the park or arrived home. Early on the morning of March 28, 2014, pedestrians and joggers in the park noticed a young woman lying on a bench, covered with a jacket and newspapers. Assuming she was a homeless person seeking shelter from the rain and asleep, they paid little attention. It was not unusual for homeless individuals to spend the night in the park. More than an hour later, one pedestrian who had seen her earlier passed by again. He noticed the woman hadn't moved and approached to check on her. When she failed to respond to his questions, he gently touched her shoulder. Receiving no reaction, he pulled aside the jacket and recoiled in shock. Beneath it was a completely naked and severely injured young woman. The man searched for a pulse but found none. Crying out for help, he attempted to administer CPR. Other bystanders rushed to the scene and called the police. Within minutes, emergency responders and law enforcement arrived, but it was already too late. The young woman had passed away. The victim was naked and had no belongings, identification, or bag, complicating efforts to immediately identify her. Strangely, she still wore rings and a necklace, ruling out robbery as a motive. The jewelry was photographed as evidence, and her body was transported for forensic examination. A few hours later, authorities identified her as Sophie Colombet, a 21-year-old university student. Detectives immediately began reconstructing the events of the previous evening. They discovered that Sophie had attended university lectures that evening and later rode the bus with a friend. Surveillance footage helped trace her movements until she entered the park. Around 10 p.m., she crossed a bridge and reached the park's entrance, where the assault likely began. Detectives believed she either didn't have time to react or was incapacitated and dragged to the bench where her body was later found. On that bench, she was savagely attacked, sustaining severe injuries. Large bruises covered her arms and under her eyes, suggesting attempts at self-defense. The bruises along her spine suggested she had been kicked, while her most critical injuries, a fractured skull caused by a blunt object, were fatal. The medical examiner concluded that Sophie did not die immediately. After the attack, the perpetrator left her to die on the bench, covering her body with a jacket and newspapers. Evidence of abuse was discovered during the autopsy, and the DNA of the perpetrator was recovered. Traces of the attacker's skin were also found under Sophie's broken nails, indicating she had fought back fiercely. Heartbreakingly, it is believed that Sophie was alive throughout the night. Even when the first park visitors noticed her, there was still a chance to save her life. She was, however, too gravely injured to call for help and passed away at dawn, an hour before police and paramedics arrived. The brutality of Sophie's murder outraged the public, especially because some park visitors might have saved her had they shown more concern. When police interviewed the witnesses who initially saw her, they consistently stated they assumed she was a homeless person sleeping and observed no movement or cries for help. This tragic indifference ignited heated debates about societal apathy and the lack of compassion for one another. Meanwhile, the detectives were assigned the task of uncovering what had happened in the park and identifying who had attacked Sophie. They found that Sophie's handbag or any other personal belongings were not found near the body. However, in the surveillance footage, she was seen entering the park with all her belongings. This pointed to two possibilities: either her belongings were left behind in the park, or the attacker had taken them. Despite conducting an extensive search of the park in the initial days, the police were unable to locate any of Sophie's items. Detectives concluded that the attacker likely took the items to mislead the investigation. Her bag contained valuable possessions, including a wallet, important documents, a mobile phone, and a tablet she used for her university work, items that could potentially be sold. The police visited local pawn shops in hopes of recovering the stolen items, but their efforts yielded no results. They also interviewed Sophie's friends and close acquaintances to identify anyone who might have harbored ill intentions toward her. However, her friends were confident that she wouldn't associate with anyone suspicious. Sophie was a reserved individual, especially around men, and if approached, she often mentioned having a fiancé and an upcoming wedding. She had no history of obsessive stalkers. Based on this information, detectives theorized that the attacker was likely a stranger who had targeted her at random. The investigation explored several possible scenarios. One theory suggested that the attacker had lain in wait for a random victim and struck as soon as Sophie entered the park. Another theory speculated that Sophie had been stalked, and the attacker had followed her after spotting her at a bus stop or on public transport. However, a detailed review of CCTV footage revealed that Sophie had been walking alone the entire time, with no men noticeably following her. This ruled out stalking, leading detectives to lean toward the first scenario. Finding the murder weapon became a top priority, and officers continued to comb the park. Once Sophie had been identified, her family in France was notified and immediately traveled to Australia to support the investigation and seek answers. Disturbingly, Sophie wasn't the first young woman to die in this park. Over the past 4 months, 3 other women under the age of 30 had been murdered under similar circumstances. However, each of these crimes had different perpetrators, all of whom had been swiftly caught and arrested. The perpetrators were individuals from marginalized backgrounds. Despite these resolutions, fear gripped the local community. Residents blamed law enforcement for failing to ensure their safety and demanded stronger protective measures to curb the wave of violent crime. This public outcry and direct confrontations with the officers working on Sophie's case only served to hinder progress. Over 70 officers were involved in the investigation, along with forensic experts searching for clothing, footwear, personal belongings, or the murder weapon connected to Sophie's case. The absence of cameras inside the park posed a significant challenge, though surrounding areas were equipped with ample CCTV coverage. Some detectives meticulously reviewed hours of footage in the hopes of identifying the attacker. Attention also shifted to a nearby shelter that provided temporary housing and support for homeless individuals. This facility became especially crowded during bad weather, making it a key focus for the investigation. Police initially checked the shelter after Sophie's body had been found, as they hadn't yet identified her and considered the possibility that she had spent the night there. However, no one at the shelter recognized Sophie. Later, detectives speculated that the attacker could have been a resident at the facility. It is worth noting that staff at the shelter were reluctant to cooperate fully with the investigation, but they did provide some useful information. The facility housed individuals recently released from prison and enforced strict curfews and reporting policies. Staff members noted that on the night of March 27th to 28th, one resident had returned much later than usual, raising further suspicion. The man had been behaving oddly and was not wearing the jacket he had earlier left with. Shortly afterward, he left the shelter and has not been seen since, despite having lived there for weeks and frequently stating that he had nowhere else to go. This individual was identified as 25-year-old Benjamin James Millward. CCTV footage from near the shelter captured a man resembling him leaving the building in the evening and heading toward the park. However, instead of entering the park, he walked around to another side, where his movements could no longer be tracked. A criminal background check revealed that Benjamin had been released from prison in December 2012, about a year and a half before Sophie's murder. He had previously served time for burglary and aggravated assault. After his release, he was placed on parole but repeatedly violated its conditions, leading to his rearrest a few months later. He remained in prison until July 2013. Several acquaintances described Benjamin as private and peculiar, though generally calm. Immediately after his release from prison, he struggled with severe substance abuse, excessive drinking, and periods of homelessness. During bad weather, He often sought refuge at a nearby temporary accommodation facility. This facility was located close to a park, which sparked public concern. Many argued that individuals who could pose a potential danger should not be allowed to reside so close to important public spaces. These concerns became widely debated on social media and in the news. The police obtained a photo of Benjamin as well as personal belongings he had left behind when he vacated his room at the shelter. Although he was the primary suspect in Sophie's attack, the authorities lacked definitive evidence linking him to the crime. To confirm his involvement, they needed to locate him, collect his fingerprints and DNA samples, and compare them with the evidence. Benjamin did not have a mobile phone or a bank card, and he had not been in contact with any family or friends since the murder. Fearing that he might have fled, detectives sought help from the public. They released photos and details of Benjamin, prompting a flood of tips to the police station. However, these initially led to dead ends. The police eventually identified his relatives, including his mother, Diane. Diane insisted that Benjamin could not have committed such a heinous act, as he had no history of violence. She explained that his prior run-ins with the law were motivated by financial gain, not malice. Several of his friends corroborated her claim, stating that Benjamin had never shown aggression toward women. Despite these assertions, investigators had no other suspects. Solid evidence was essential to confirm or refute Benjamin's involvement in the crime. News of Benjamin spread far beyond Brisbane, keeping the case in the public spotlight. 9 days after the murder, on April 7, 2014, motel owner in New South Wales, about 180 kilometers from Brisbane, contacted the police. The owner reported that a man resembling Benjamin was staying at the motel. The guest had paid in cash and had been staying for over a day. Initially, the owner had not recognized him, but after seeing a news report and Benjamin's photo, he alerted the authorities. The police acted swiftly, fearing Benjamin would flee again. Fortunately, when they arrived at the motel, Benjamin was still in his room and did not resist arrest. The officers did not disclose why he was being detained. During the drive back to Brisbane, he repeatedly mentioned that he had done something terrible but claimed he couldn't fully recall what had happened or with whom. He attributed his memory gaps to his heavy use of banned substances over the previous 2 weeks, which had left him with fragmented memories. Despite his confusion, he admitted that he had committed a serious wrongdoing. Upon arriving in Brisbane, the authorities placed Benjamin into custody. News of his arrest quickly spread, and the local community learned that he was the main suspect in Sophie's murder. Once it became known that Benjamin had been a resident at the shelter near the park, public outrage intensified, with many expressing anger over the proximity of the facility to such a critical public space. The 3 girls attacked before Sophie were also victims of individuals who were temporarily living in the area. Following the first attack, local residents strongly demanded improved security measures both around and inside the park. Some residents took extreme stances, even calling for the infamous nearby building to be demolished and for the shelter to be relocated outside the city. Unfortunately, no action was taken at the time, which ultimately led to the tragic deaths of 3 more girls. When the death toll reached 4, concerned Brisbane residents organized a vigil and protest. Participants carried candles and posters as they marched through the streets. Among the approximately 1,000 protesters were many students from Griffith University, including Sophie's friends. Some held signs reading "Safe Street for Sophie." The march crossed the bridge, passed through the park, and ended at the site where Sophie's body had been discovered. Along the way, numerous flowers were left in tribute. A temporary memorial was created near a nearby shop, displaying Sophie's name along with photographs of the other victims. The event drew widespread attention from the public, the media, and government authorities, sparking a renewed national debate on safety concerns in Brisbane and beyond. Meanwhile, Benjamin faced charges of armed robbery, abuse, and aggravated murder. While in custody, DNA samples were collected from him and matched 100% with biological evidence found during Sophie's autopsy and under her fingernails. Benjamin cooperated with investigators, revealing the locations of Sophie's mobile phone, tablet, and wallet. Despite claiming memory issues, he gradually began to recall the gruesome details of the crime during police interrogations. Benjamin explained that on the evening of March 27th, he left his shelter to purchase an illegal substance and consumed large quantities of alcohol both before and after. On his way back, he noticed Sophie walking alone across the bridge toward the park. He followed her and attacked her shortly after she entered the park, insisting that he had not carried a weapon. Though police doubted his claim, he maintained that he had used no weapons during the attack. He admitted to brutally beating Sophie over an extended period, stomping on her body and head, which he attributed to the influence of a banned substance he had taken. Once Sophie was unconscious, Benjamin abused her, stole her belongings, and left her body on a bench, covering it with his jacket and some newspapers. He disposed of her clothes and handbag in the river and sold her valuables to buy more banned substances. Sophie's umbrella was later recovered from the water, but many of her belongings were never found. Despite the methodical nature of his actions, he claimed the murder was not premeditated. After the murder, Benjamin returned to the shelter, gathered his belongings, and fled a few hours later. Although he began to realize the gravity of his crime, he chose not to surrender to the authorities. Instead, he sold Sophie's valuables for money and traveled to New South Wales, where he was eventually apprehended. Benjamin avoided a trial by confessing to 2 charges. However, he continued to deny using a weapon and insisted that the crime was a spontaneous act of aggression driven by his altered state of mind caused by the use of banned substances. Before sentencing, Benjamin addressed Sophie's family, apologizing to everyone, including her fiancé. He also expressed gratitude to both the family and the police for their determination in apprehending him and bringing him to justice, something he admitted he would never have had the courage to do on his own. Unsurprisingly, Sophie's fiancé and family did not accept his apology. They were also dissatisfied with the court's decision. On October 25, 2016, Benjamin James Millward was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 20 years. Considering his age, there is a chance he could be released at a relatively young age, potentially posing a future threat. Sophie's family believed the sentence was far too lenient for such a dangerous individual and felt he should spend the rest of his life in isolation without the possibility of parole. Raissa Suelen Ferreira da Silva lived in Curitiba and aspired to work in fashion and beauty. She had moved from Bahia, seeking a new beginning, with the support of a lifelong acquaintance. He aided her relocation, provided professional contacts, and assured her of a promising future. In early June 2025, he informed her of a fantastic job opportunity in another city. Raissa packed, bid farewell to her friends, and departed with him. Immediately after, all attempts to contact her were unsuccessful. From a young age, Raissa was very ambitious and dreamed of working in fashion and music. Growing up in a family with limited financial resources, she knew she would have to create her own opportunities. She began participating in beauty pageants and, around the age of 19, won the regional Miss Serra Branca contest in 2020. This was her first step into public life. Concurrently, she managed a social media page where she shared humorous and beauty-related content and promoted products. Later, Raissa enrolled in college to study aesthetics and took part-time jobs in retail and hospitality. She met Marcelo Alves when she was around 10 years old. He taught Kung Fu through a community program that Raissa and her cousin joined. Raissa viewed Marcelo as a trusted mentor. Over the years, their families became close, particularly because Marcelo's son, Doni, was the same age as Raissa. Raissa's family trusted Marcelo completely. Doni was also practiced martial arts with her as children. In 2022, Raissa moved to Curitiba at around 20 years old. She had always wanted to work in fashion and digital content creation, believed that her hometown lacked opportunities. Curitiba, with its modern atmosphere, busy environment, and numerous agencies, events, and companies, seemed like the perfect place to pursue her goals. Her move was also motivated by an offer from Marcelo. Marcelo Alves is a stand-up comedian, had been performing in bars and pizzerias and sharing videos online in Curitiba for over 10 years. He offered to help Raissa relocate. He promising support and saying his professional connections could boost her career. Raissa found his offer convincing and decided to move. When she first arrived, she stayed with Marcelo and his son. This was a sensible arrangement since she was new to the city and didn't know anyone. However, she moved out soon after. The reasons for her move are not entirely clear, but sources say that she and Marcelo started experiencing friction. Apparently, Marcelo's interest in Raissa became more than just friendly. Following that, she moved in with some friends and lived there until June 2025. Life in Curitiba wasn't easy. Raissa kept working on her growth as a content creator while searching for opportunities in the beauty and aesthetics industry. At the same time, she attended college to gain professional training in her chosen field. Like many young adults starting out in a big city, she also worked part-time in retail and food service. Despite the challenges, Raissa didn't complain. She had a clear goal: to achieve financial independence and professional recognition. After moving to Curitiba, Raissa distanced herself from Marcelo, no longer considering him a close friend. However, he remained in her social circle, occasionally contacting her and acting like a family friend. This allows him to maintain a certain level of trust with her. Raissa seemed unconcerned, at least outwardly. In Curitiba, she appeared confident and focused on achieving her goals. But one conversation changed everything. On the morning of June 2, 2025, Raissa woke up with a plan. She was set to leave Curitiba and start fresh in the city of Sorocaba, located in the state of São Paulo. She had made this decision after speaking with Marcelo, who told her he had found her an excellent job. According to him, the position in Sorocaba came with great pay, housing, and room for professional growth. Raissa believed this was her big break, a real chance to improve her life. She packed her clothes, personal items, and work tools. She was certain about her decision. She told her friends she was moving permanently, not just taking a trip. The job offer was so good that she could finally stop renting, quit her side jobs, and concentrate solely on her new work. She also mentioned that Marcelo would drive her to Sorocaba, and he did. Since he didn't own a car, he borrowed one. Around 11 a.m., he arrived in the Porto neighborhood. Raissa's friends helped carry her bags down and said goodbye at the entrance to the building. A video from that moment. Marcelo and Raissa pulled away. That was the last visual confirmation of her whereabouts. Just 20 minutes after leaving, Raissa stopped responding to messages. Her phone went offline. Calls didn't go through, and texts were never delivered. At first, her friends thought she might just be out of signal range, traveling through a rural area. But as the hours passed, their concern grew. All day long, no friend or relative could contact her. Disappearing without a word was completely out of character for Raissa. By evening, her friends tried calling Marcelo, but he didn't answer. That's when they contacted Raissa's parents back in Bahia. By that night, the family had filed an official missing person report. Law enforcement began the investigation almost immediately. The first steps focused on confirming key details: her last known location, timeline, who she was with, and the route she was supposed to take. It was verified that on the morning of June 2nd, she left Curitiba with Marcelo. After that, there was no trace of her, no phone calls, no messages, and no signs that she had arrived at her supposed destination. At the time of her disappearance, Raissa had been in good spirits. She hadn't mentioned any doubts or problems. What she told her friends painted a hopeful picture. She was ready to start a new chapter with stability, growth, and a promising career. That optimism, the way she had spoken about the future, made her sudden silence even more alarming. None of her loved ones could have predicted that a move arranged by someone she'd known since childhood would lead to her vanishing. Raissa was a grown, independent woman, not someone prone to impulsive decisions. That's what made her disappearance so difficult to understand. That day ended without answers, leaving everyone in a state of growing uncertainty. Raissa's phone stayed silent. No texts, no signs of movement. And as more time passed, one thing became clearer: what had seemed like a chance at a better life might have been a trap all along. Because Marcelo Alves was the last person known to have seen Raisa, he quickly became the main suspect. He told the police that Raisa had changed her mind about going to Sorocaba and asked him to drop her off in the Ganchinho area, about 9 miles from her home. He said she told him she would order a ride using an app and go somewhere else. Marcelo claimed this was the last time he heard from her. However, his story seemed suspicious. Why would Raisa, who had carefully prepared for her move, suddenly change her mind? Why didn't she contact her friends or family? There were no obvious explanations. The police took Marcelo's statement but continued to investigate. His behavior started to appear odd. Initially, he invited Raisa's family from Bahia to stay with him in Curitiba while they searched for her. While this seemed kind at first, it later felt like he was trying to manipulate the information being shared. In conversations with Raisa's relatives, he acted supportive and worried but avoided answering direct questions. Raisa's sister started organizing search efforts in their hometown. She printed and handed out flyers with Raisa's picture, posted updates on social media, and contacted her network. At that point, no one suspected a tragic outcome. Law enforcement continued interviewing people, paying close attention to Marcelo's son, Doni. Doni told investigators that Marcelo had mentioned his trip to Sorocaba and offered Raisa a ride since he was going that way. However, Doni said things didn't go as planned. He claimed Marcelo told him Raisa initially canceled, then returned to their house, and finally left for good. This account differed from Marcelo's statements to the police. Marcelo's stories were inconsistent, changing from one conversation to the next. In the 8 days following Raisa's disappearance, Marcelo gave at least 3 different versions of events. One version stated Raisa left and took a rideshare. Another said she stayed at his place but later disappeared. In a third version, she wanted to stay with him, but he refused. Doni's timeline was also unclear. These conflicting stories and changing details increased suspicions. The police had no security camera footage, location information, or witnesses. The only thing known for sure was that Raisa got into a car with Marcelo and then disappeared. After that, her phone, bank cards, and social media accounts showed no activity, suggesting she didn't leave on her own. Marcelo started acting strangely. His calm reaction seemed inappropriate given the situation. He also continued to post on social media as if nothing was wrong. Raisa's family was very upset by this. They didn't understand why Marcelo, who had known Raisa for so long, appeared so unconcerned and distant. They felt he should be doing more to help. Also, they were troubled by his constantly changing explanations. This became a major concern as the family demanded clear and logical answers, but he couldn't provide any. As the investigation progressed, Marcelo became the prime suspect. His statements contradicted the available evidence. Suspicion mounted against him, and Raisa's family became convinced he was hiding something, though they didn't yet know the full truth. On June 9, 2025, Marcelo Alves, with his lawyer, went to the police station and declared he was ready to tell the truth. That day, he confessed to committing a serious crime. Before making his official statement, Marcelo sent Raisa's family lawyer a voice message. In it, he claimed he had considered Raisa carefully, denied wanting to harm her, but confessed he may have had feelings for her that went beyond friendship. He also suggested the whole truth would be revealed soon. This message was the first sign that he might be involved. When questioned, Marcelo confessed that the job offer was a complete lie. He said he made it up to trick Raisa into traveling with him. He borrowed a car, picked her up at her house, and took her to his home. There, he told her the truth: he had strong feelings for her, and there was no job in Sorocaba. Marcelo stated that Raisa was shocked and very upset by something he did. He said she got angry, criticized him, and expressed how disappointed she was. He became overwhelmed, lost control, and acted out due to a breakdown. He confessed that, in this state, he strangled her using a plastic cable tie. That, he left her in the room. He returned 10 minutes later and found she was dead. He then decided to conceal his crime. He wrapped her body in plastic and sealed it with duct tape. He called his son, Donnie, and told him what he had done. Marcelo said Donnie was shocked and told him to go to the police. Donnie did not participate in the murder itself. However, he agreed to help his father dispose of Rice's body. They put it in the car's trunk and drove towards Araucaria, a town near Curitiba. Marcelo said they chose a spot in a wooded area. There, they dug a shallow grave, only 6 to 8 inches deep, and buried Rice. Marcelo willingly told this story and later agreed to show investigators the burial place. That same day, he guided police to the precise location. When the police dug there, they found Rice's body, wrapped in plastic, in a shallow grave. The evidence suggested she had been suffocated, confirming his confession. Marcelo described exactly what he did, which allowed investigators to confirm his story with forensic evidence. Marcelo was arrested that day and charged. Although police had his confession, they needed independent evidence to confirm the details of the crime. His son, Donnie, was questioned separately. Donnie admitted to helping his father after the act but claimed he didn't know what Marcelo planned to do beforehand and wasn't involved in the act itself. He stated he was scared and confused, that he tried to persuade his father to confess, but Marcelo refused. Forensic analysis contradicted Marcelo's statement that he used a plastic cable tie. Experts determined the marks on Rice's neck suggested manual strangulation or suffocation with a soft object like a plastic bag. The discovery of a polyethylene bag near the body strengthened this theory. Investigators began to suspect Marcelo had planned the murder, rather than committing it in a moment of rage, as he claimed. His story of a sudden argument didn't align with the evidence. He had arranged transportation, lured Rice with a fake job offer, convinced her to bring her belongings, drove her to an isolated location, and cut her off from everyone. The steps he took to hide the body, wrapping it, moving it, and burying it, indicated a calculated plan, not a loss of control. Furthermore, Rice showed no phone or online activity after entering Marcelo's car, leading investigators to believe he intentionally isolated her to commit the crime. After the initial investigation, authorities determined the crime was likely femicide, a type of gender-based violence. The main reason for this conclusion was the motive. Rice had refused a romantic relationship with Marcelo. This crime carries a prison sentence of 20 to 40 years. Investigators believe this was a premeditated act, not a spontaneous one. While the court will consider the defense's account, Marcelo's story already appears to contradict the accumulating evidence. Donnie also faced legal trouble. Donnie confessed to helping cover it up. He admitted to moving the body, driving to the burial location, and assisting in the cover-up. Consequently, Donnie was charged with unlawful concealment. He was initially arrested but later released on bail because this charge usually doesn't lead to long prison sentences. After Marcelo Alves's confession was validated and the details of the crime were fully revealed, the case progressed to the next stage. The public and Rice's family, friends, and the countless people who followed the case were deeply affected. The shocking nature of the crime was compounded by the identity of the perpetrator. Rice had known and trusted Marcelo since childhood. The stark contrast between his image as a caring mentor and the person who committed the crime made the situation even more tragic. Rice's case gained significant attention on social media, with her photos, posts, and videos rapidly circulating throughout Brazil. People voiced their outrage over the injustice, the dangers of misplaced trust, and the potential for betrayal from those closest to us. Her story resonated deeply, becoming viewed as a national tragedy because it involved the loss of a young woman in a place where she felt safe, with someone she considered family. Human rights organizations pointed out that these crimes frequently involve perpetrators who have a personal relationship with the victim. Rice's story became a stark illustration of how manipulation, control, and concealed aggression can escalate, leading to devastating outcomes. Advocacy groups used her case to raise awareness, advocate for legal changes, and promote stronger measures to prevent gender-related violence. Marcelo remains in custody awaiting trial. Since his confession, He hasn't made any further statements or public comments about the case. Dhoni, after being released on bail, has also stayed out of the public eye. Posts about Raisa continue to circulate, especially around the anniversary of her disappearance and her birthday. Though the trial has yet to take place, even during the early phase of the investigation, Raisa Swellen's case became symbolic. It illustrated how thin the line can be between trust and danger, how easily manipulation can hide behind the mask of friendship. Raisa didn't take a reckless risk. She accepted help from someone she had known since childhood, and that tragically became the mistake that cost her everything. It was a peaceful November afternoon in Stamford, Connecticut. Anna, age 32, was at home in her apartment, ending her day. Soon after, neighbors heard screams. When the police arrived, they found the door unlocked. Inside, they discovered a horrifying scene. Anna had been stabbed, and there was blood everywhere. However, there was no sign of forced entry, and nothing was stolen. The police had no immediate suspects. The question was, who would want to kill Anna, and why? The answer remained a mystery for years. When the truth finally came out, it was more shocking than anyone expected. Anna Lisa Raimundo was born in 1970 and grew up in New York City. Her parents, immigrants from the Philippines. Her father, a doctor, dedicated himself to his U.S. practice and providing medical care in impoverished countries. Together, her parents instilled the values of kindness, hard work, and purpose in their 3 children through their own actions, teachings. Anna, the middle child, stood out early on. She was intelligent, driven, and very compassionate, making a positive impact on those around her. Her hard work paid off in school. After graduating high school with honors, she gained admission to Harvard University, a top-ranked school. She thrived there and continued her education at Columbia University, solidifying her image as a promising young woman. Anna started her career soon after finishing school. She joined Purdue Pharma, a well-known pharmaceutical company. Purdue Pharma was located in Stamford, Connecticut, so Anna moved there for the job. This was a big step, but it paid off. Her job allowed her to be financially independent. By her early 20s, she had bought her own apartment. Everything in her life seemed to be going well. She had a good career, a home, and a promising future. Anna felt something was missing in her life until she met Nelson Sessler, a reserved and calm co-worker at Purdue Pharma, who was unlike her outgoing personality. Despite their contrasting personalities, they became friends, and their friendship developed into a romantic relationship. They kept their relationship private, particularly at work. Nelson spent increasing amounts of time at Anna's apartment, and her loved ones recognized that she was in love. She envisioned a future with Nelson and talked about getting married. In October 2002, they attended Anna's sister's wedding. At the reception, Anna caught the bridal bouquet, leading many to believe that she and Nelson would soon get married. However, just a few weeks later, their situation took a dark turn. On November 8th, Anna and Nelson were supposed to meet friends for dinner in Manhattan. The friends waited, expecting them to arrive, but they never did. As Anna didn't answer her phone, the friends left messages and assumed Anna were simply late or held up at work. But the continued silence soon suggested something much more serious. Earlier that day, a neighbor saw a man acting suspiciously enter Anna's apartment and called the police. When the police arrived, they knocked, but no one answered. Finding the door unlocked, they entered and discovered a gruesome scene. The apartment was wrecked, furniture was overturned, and belongings were scattered everywhere. In the hallway, Anna's dead body lay in a pool of blood. She had been stabbed multiple times, and the scene showed a violent struggle had taken place. She had clearly fought back. Even though the apartment was a mess, there was no sign of a break-in. The door wasn't forced, and nothing valuable was stolen. It didn't look like a robbery, it felt more like a personal attack. Detectives believe Anna probably knew her attacker and proactively let them in. There was no sign of a struggle at the entrance. The locks were untouched. The first lead came from the anonymous 911 call that had prompted the police response. The call had been made by a woman who described seeing a man entering Anna's apartment and fearing for Anna's safety. But before she could provide her name or any additional details, the call was suddenly cut off. Dispatchers attempted to redial the number, only to discover it originated from a pay phone located inside a restaurant not far from Anna's building. Police officers searched the area for clues, interviewing restaurant staff and customers, hoping someone had information. However, no one recalled seeing a woman making a phone call that day. The investigators were frustrated, as the anonymous tipster seemed impossible to find. Without caller ID, security footage, or anyone able to identify the caller's voice, her identity remained unknown. Having no other leads, the detectives focused on Anna's partner, Nelson Sessler, as is common in such investigations. Nelson discovered Anna's death upon returning home from work and finding police at her apartment. Reports indicated his reaction was unusually calm. He didn't appear shocked or upset, a lack of emotion that quickly made him a suspect. He was the last person known to have seen Anna alive, having spent the night with her and left in the morning, making him a primary focus of the investigation. Nelson seemed to have a solid alibi. Security camera footage showed him leaving Anna's apartment building early that morning. He was wearing the same clothes when he returned from work, and they were clean, with no signs of blood or injury. Despite evidence of a violent struggle at the crime scene, Nelson had no scratches or marks on him. Investigators found this odd, given how much Anna fought back. Furthermore, Nelson's co-workers confirmed he stayed at the office all day. No security footage or witness accounts placed him at the crime scene during the time the crime occurred. Even though the police still suspected Nelson, they couldn't find any solid evidence to connect him to the murder. They had no motive to explain why he would do it, and no forensic evidence placing him at the scene. They collected many blood samples, hoping to find DNA from the killer. However, all the samples only showed Anna's blood. The small amount of other DNA found didn't match anyone in the police databases. The investigation stalled. After 5 months of no leads, a break finally came on March 22, 2003. At a nearby hospital, Paul Christos was admitted for emergency surgery, suffering from 3 stab wounds to the chest. He was discovered in the hospital parking lot, wounded but still alive. Witnesses to the attack alerted hospital staff, who intervened quickly. Doctors stabilized Paul, and after regaining consciousness, he identified his attacker to investigators. According to Paul, his attacker was his wife, Sheila Davilo. Paul described what began as a seemingly innocent game meant to add excitement to their marriage. It was Sheila's idea. First, she put on a blindfold. Then, Paul touched her with different things from around the house, and she tried to guess what they were using only her sense of touch. After that, Paul took his turn. Paul, blindfolded and handcuffed, suddenly experiences severe pain in his chest. And he felt the pain again. Confused and in shock, he heard Sheila say she might have accidentally hit him. Bleeding and disoriented, Paul couldn't understand what was happening. His first thought was that Sheila had fallen, and he had been injured in the process. As the blood pooled and the pain worsened, it became obvious this was not an accident. Paul, injured and in need of medical help, asked Sheila to call an ambulance, despite her apparent fear of blood which, she said, caused her panic. He overheard her on the phone and assumed she was calling for emergency services. He waited, but after 30 minutes, no ambulance arrived. Realizing Sheila had not called for help, Paul told her to drive him to the hospital, which was only a few miles away. The situation worsened when Sheila couldn't find the key to unlock Paul's handcuffs. Since they were running out of time, they had to break the chair to free him. As they drove, Paul noticed Sheila was driving unusually slow and carefully. He pleaded with her to drive faster, but she refused. When they arrived at the hospital, Paul thought she would hurry him inside. Instead, she parked in a distant, isolated part of the parking lot, far from the entrance, and turned off the car. She got out without a word and went to the trunk. Paul assumed she was getting assistance or something to help him. However, she came back with a knife, not medical supplies. For the third time that day, Paul felt a knife stab him in the chest. Sheila tried to run away, leaving Paul trapped in the car. A witness saw this and called the police, who arrived quickly. Paul was rushed to the hospital and underwent emergency open heart surgery for his severe wounds. He survived. Afterward, police investigated the scene and found Sheila's phone in the parking lot near the car. The phone revealed that Sheila had lied. She hadn't called for an ambulance, even though Paul thought he heard her do so. Instead, she had called someone named Nelson. Police traced the call and started investigating Nelson. Sheila called him immediately after attacking her husband. Detectives discovered that Nelson had previously been involved with Anna Lisa Raimundo. He was also a person of interest in Anna's unsolved murder, which occurred a few months prior. The investigation suggests that Sheila connects two seemingly unrelated violent crimes. Sheila Davilo was born in 1969. Raised with a strong emphasis on education, Sheila excelled academically. She followed her parents' path by studying biochemistry at New York University. Sheila's parents arranged her marriage, but it didn't last. While studying at NYU, she had an affair with her classmate, Paul Christos. Her husband found out, and they divorced. Sheila then married Paul in 2000. They both had successful careers and moved to Pleasantville, New York. Their life seemed perfect, but hidden problems existed. Why did she try to kill her husband? What was her relationship to Nelson and, more crucially, to Anna? Everything started to become clear when the police brought Nelson in for questioning. He was surprised to be called in and didn't understand how he was involved. However, once he arrived at the station and discovered that Sheila, he began to understand. At first, Nelson claimed he and Sheila were just friends and colleagues who kept in contact. However, as the detectives questioned him further, his story fell apart. Eventually, feeling pressured, Nelson confessed that he and Sheila had been having an affair. This changed the entire investigation. The affair began in the summer of 2001, when Sheila, unhappy in her marriage to Paul, she met Nelson at work. They quickly became lovers. Sheila's marriage to Paul was strained and loveless. They were simply living together. So Sheila found solace in Nelson. Then, he met Anna, whose intelligence and personality attracted him. For a while, he dated both women, unsure of who he wanted to be with. However, he fell more in love with Anna and decided to end things with Sheila by the end of 2001 to be with Anna. Sheila hid her pain. She pretended not to care about the breakup in front of Nelson, but she felt humiliated, angry, and jealous because Nelson had chosen Anna over her. After Anna's murder in November 2002, while others avoided Nelson, some suspecting he was involved in Anna's death, Sheila stayed by his side. They started a relationship again. During questioning, the detectives learned that on the day Sheila stabbed Paul, she called Nelson to arrange lunch, not to confess. She said the call was to tell him she had to cancel because Paul had been in an accident. Nelson didn't even know Sheila was married. She had told him she was divorced, and her home life seemed to confirm this. He had spent many weekends and nights at her house and never saw any evidence of another man. The detectives uncovered a shocking truth. Sheila had constructed a complex lie to maintain relationships with both men. She told Nelson that her disabled brother lived with her and was too emotionally fragile to know about her dating life. Whenever Nelson stayed over, Sheila made Paul leave the house completely, removing all his belongings and forcing him to sleep somewhere else. Sheila told a strange story during questioning. She insisted that Paul's stabbing was an accident that happened during a guessing game with household items. She said the last item was a knife that accidentally slipped from her hand. However, investigators didn't believe her. Her weak excuses fell apart under questioning, and she was charged with attempted murder. As detectives investigated further, they became more and more sure that Sheila was also responsible for Anna's death. She had a motive. Nelson had left her for Anna, and the timing of Anna's death seemed too suspicious to be a coincidence. Paul inadvertently confirmed the detective's suspicions. During an interview, they mentioned Anna's name, and Paul immediately recognized it. Sheila had frequently told him about a fictional love triangle at work involving characters named Jack, Melissa, and Anna. It became clear that Jack represented Nelson, Melissa was Sheila herself, and Anna was the actual woman Sheila saw as a romantic rival. Sheila was obsessed with her rivals, not just discussing them. She asked Paul for advice on how to break in undetected. Thinking he was assisting his wife's friend, Paul offered suggestions and even loaned her his night vision scope, unknowingly helping Sheila stalk Anna. The investigators now understood the situation. They believed Sheila killed Anna because she was obsessed with Nelson and wanted to get rid of her rival. After Anna's death, Sheila saw an opportunity to be with Nelson. However, Paul, her husband, was still an obstacle. She couldn't be with Nelson freely while still married, and another divorce would embarrass her family. Sheila believed the only solution was to kill Paul. However, this was just a theory until solid evidence emerged. Investigators had collected many blood samples from Anna's apartment. One sample, a tiny droplet on the bathroom faucet, had been missed initially. This droplet was likely left when the killer washed up after the attack. DNA analysis confirmed the detective's suspicion: the blood belonged to Sheila Davilo. Around the time of the murder, Paul remembered Sheila having a deep cut on her hand. She said she got it from a dog food can, but it now seemed likely she was injured during Anna's struggle. The DNA match and analysis of the 911 call gave prosecutors what they needed. Although Sheila's family and friends couldn't confirm it was her voice on the call, voice analysis proved she made it. After killing Anna, she anonymously called the police, possibly out of guilt or to influence when the body was found. In 2004, Sheila Davilo was convicted of attempted murder and assault of Paul Christos. She was sentenced to a maximum of 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2007, 5 years after the Anna's murder, Sheila was charged. Confident in her innocence, she fired her lawyers and decided to represent herself. Her trial began in 2012, 10 years after the crime. Her ex-husband, Paul Christos, testified against her. Despite her attempts to influence the jury, the evidence against her was overwhelming. Sheila Davilo was convicted of Ana Lisa Raimundo's murder after a 2.5-week trial and sentenced to 50 years. After completing a 25-year sentence at Bedford Hills Prison for Women in New York, she will be transferred to a prison in Connecticut to begin serving a 50-year sentence. In total, she will be imprisoned for 75 years. Her case is a disturbing example of how deception, obsession, and manipulation can hide beneath an ordinary appearance. The Ana Lisa Raimundo case is a shocking tragedy that exposes the dangers of jealousy and obsession hidden behind a facade of normalcy. Sheila Davilo, driven by unrequited feelings for Nelson Sessler, murdered Anna and attempted to murder her husband, Paul Christos. Sheila's appeals in 2014 and 2015 failed, with the Connecticut Supreme Court confirming that Paul's testimony was not bound by the marital communication privilege. The case attracted significant media attention, with extensive coverage on shows such as Snapped and Betrayed, highlighting the dangers of toxic relationships. Anna's family, including her parents Renato and Susan and sister Bernadette, expressed relief that justice had been served. They established a medical scholarship fund in the Philippines in Anna's memory, turning their loss into a meaningful legacy. Anna's story is a warning about the fragility of trust and the consequences of deception. It reminds us that behind the most intimate relationships can lurk deadly intentions, leaving wounds that never heal for those left behind. In Kimmelwaken, a normal afternoon took a dark turn. A man was found bleeding from a stab wound to the neck. Later, another person was discovered injured on a bus. These were the first in a series of attacks, all marked by sudden, silent violence without robbery or warning. The perpetrator was someone no one suspected. In 1995, Itzel Nayeli Montano Garcia was born in Kimmelwaken, a city in the state of Mexico. This city would later be known for its violent crimes. Itzel's early life was difficult, growing up in a poor neighborhood where survival was a daily challenge and childhood was short-lived. She was the second of 6 children. Her father worked as a car washer, and her mother earned money by selling items on the street. Their home was inadequate, small, run down, and located in a dangerous area. The family faced constant poverty, struggling with hunger, debt, and addiction. Itzel had to grow up too quickly. She took care of her younger siblings, handling adult responsibilities while still a child. She stopped going to school after the 3rd grade. By age 14, her life changed drastically. She started a relationship with an older man and became pregnant. However, she experienced complications during her pregnancy and needed a hysterectomy, which saved her life but meant she could never have children. This loss caused her deep sadness and depression. 2 years later, her partner left her. Alone and heartbroken, she turned to banned substance for comfort, which resulted in her becoming homeless. The streets became her harsh reality, filled with addiction, violence, and hopelessness. She slept under bridges, begged for money, stole when necessary, and became defensive when threatened. Rafael, a minibus driver, noticed Itzel's beauty. He was an aggressive and possessive man who offered her shelter. For a while, it seemed like a good thing. They moved in together, hoping to make a life together, but their relationship was unstable. Their life together quickly became violent, filled with arguments, screaming, physical fights, and injuries. Rafael often belittled Itzel for her lack of education. However, the biggest problem in their relationship was her inability to have children, which constantly reminded them of a past trauma. By 2015, Itzel's life was completely out of control. At only 20 years old, she was addicted to industrial solvents and losing touch with reality. She became aggressive, unpredictable, and prone to violence. In September of that year, during a psychotic episode, she tried to slash her grandmother and Rafael's necks with a pocket knife. No one died, but this incident showed how far gone she was and started a disturbing series of events. The first known assault occurred on September 13. Jose Alberto Pichardo, a 36-year-old tinsmith, was walking through his neighborhood when he was viciously stabbed in the abdomen. The blade pierced his arm and left a gaping wound across his neck. Bleeding and barely conscious, Jose managed to crawl to his home. His sister found him collapsed near the front door and immediately called for help. Thanks to the quick arrival of emergency responders, he survived the attack. From September 13 to 18, 2015, a series of stabbings caused widespread fear in Camilwaken. These seemingly random attacks terrorized 5 neighborhoods, leaving victims and a sense of panic in their wake. The motive behind the attacks was unknown, but they all followed the same disturbing pattern. Victims were attacked in broad daylight, at close range, with a knife or razor blade. There was no apparent pattern or warning. The violence came suddenly and unexpectedly. Later that same day, just a few hours later, Antonio Soto Leyva, 43, was ambushed on his way to work. A single, devastating 15 centimeters wound slashed across his neck. Acting on sheer instinct, Antonio fought back, landing a blow that momentarily stunned his attacker. Though wounded, he attempted to chase the assailant, making it only 150 feet before blood loss overcame him. Paramedics who treated him described his survival as miraculous. The blade had somehow missed all major arteries. Antonio, like others who would later testify, was certain of one thing: the attacker was a woman. Her small frame and calm demeanor had made her seem unthreatening until she struck from behind with calculated force. The description was eerily similar to what other survivors would later report. The next day, on September 15, the violence escalated. During a bus ride, Rosario Laureano Ventura, 40, was silently stabbed. No one noticed the attack in real time. Only when the driver completed his route did he find Rosario lying motionless in the rear of the vehicle. She had been bleeding out for minutes, and by the time she was rushed to a hospital, it was too late. Rosario became the first confirmed fatality of the attacks. That night, another assault unfolded under the cover of darkness. Rosa Maria Jimenez Martinez was walking down a quiet street when she was struck. At first, she believed a man had attacked her, but as her assailant fled, she realized it was a woman. Thankfully, her injuries were not life-threatening, and she made a full recovery. Then came September 16th. Around 11:30 p.m., Yolanda Velcrin Magadan, 45, was stabbed multiple times. The wounds were brutal, especially a deep gash on her right side that tore through layers of skin and muscle. Yolanda's life was saved only after 2 emergency blood transfusions. Her account of the attack, like the others, described the same profile, a woman swift and trained in knife combat. The following day, another young life was stolen. Brenda Chantal Mondragon Martinez, a 16-year-old student, was walking to school with her mother when the attacker struck in full view of witnesses. Brenda was stabbed in the neck. No one could stop it in time. Brenda died before she could reach the hospital. Her death marked the second fatality in what was now being labeled a local crisis. On September 18th, the final confirmed victim was Luisa Soto, 40. Though gravely wounded, she survived. Her experience echoed the accounts of those before her: an unexpected ambush, a woman with a knife, and an attack that came without warning. By then, the entire municipality of Kimmelwaken had plunged into chaos. Rumors spread like wildfire. A female assailant, armed and unrelenting, was stalking the streets. Survivors described her knife skills as disturbingly precise, her movements sharp and fast, as though trained in martial arts or even military techniques. The press gave her a name, the Slasher of Kimmelwaken. She didn't care about gender. She didn't rob. She didn't speak. She just attacked. Residents began believing a serial killer was on the loose. The community's fear turned into action. Neighbors armed themselves, some with sticks and knives, others with bats and even firearms. They formed neighborhood patrols, taking shifts throughout the night to guard their homes. Kimmelwaken became a city on edge where everyone looked twice at strangers and whispered nervously about the woman who vanished into the night after each assault. The local police, facing increasing pressure from the frightened community, started working closely with witnesses and survivors. Slowly, a description of the suspect began to develop. Initially, investigators thought the attacker might be a man dressed as a woman, based on the strength, precision, and planned nature of the attacks. However, this idea was quickly rejected as more accounts were gathered. The emerging description was of a young woman, probably between 20 and 25 years old, with light brown skin, long dark hair, and a thin frame. Witnesses remembered her being well-dressed. She didn't appear dangerous. 2 specific physical details were particularly memorable: Santa Muerte tattoos on her body, a disturbing symbol that only made the mystery more intense. Investigators were most disturbed by the attacker's method. She always attacked from behind, typically in public places, using a folding knife to target the neck. Her calm behavior made victims feel safe until it was too late. The attacks weren't related to arguments, robbery, or kidnapping attempts. There seemed to be no motive, only violence and terror. Most attacks happened early in the morning in neighboring areas. Police increased patrols in those areas to try and catch her before another attack. However, media coverage worsened the fear. Sensational news, guesswork, and growing rumors made people even more paranoid. Families stayed home, and businesses suffered as fewer people went out. The local economy, once lively, declined because of widespread anxiety. The attacks abruptly stopped after September 18th. While relief washed over the community, unease remained. People wondered if the attacker was gone for good or simply hiding. The police continued their investigation, and the community remained anxious for weeks. On October 2, 2015, the authorities announced the arrest of Itzel Nayeli Montano Garcia, a young woman from Kimmelwaken. This news shocked the community, as many residents knew her. Days before, the police had circulated her photo as a person of interest on social media. However, the Attorney General's office then issued a statement denying Itzel's involvement. They claimed the photo was related to an unrelated domestic violence case and warned against spreading misinformation. This contradiction caused even greater confusion until October 9, when authorities reversed their statement and officially named Eitzel as the prime suspect. Investigators say she fits the description provided by witnesses and lived near all the crime scenes. They also discovered that she may have committed her first violent act on September 13th, when she reportedly assaulted her partner during a domestic dispute. Police believe her second attack was on Elto, a local leader of street vendors. Both men identified her as their attacker and as the person responsible for the series of assaults that have been plaguing the city. Eitzel's family described a troubling pattern. When she used banned substance, especially solvents, her personality changed drastically. She became unpredictable, aggressive, and frightening. Investigators believed she committed the attacks while high on these substances, explaining the crime's erratic nature. Based on this evidence, prosecutors issued an arrest warrant. When police searched her home, they found a purple jacket and pink sneakers that victims had described. Several survivors identified her as the attacker. However, the critical piece of evidence was a mistake Eitzel made during her last attack. She dropped a folding knife, which police found. Forensic analysis confirmed her fingerprints were on the knife. Following the violent events of September in Camagüey, the Mexican State Attorney General's office formally accused Eitzel of involvement in 4 criminal cases. The charges, including assault, attempted murder, and murder, stem from incidents alleged to have taken place between September 13th and 18th, 2015, during a period of intense violence that gripped the community. However, when questioned, Eitzel gave a contrasting explanation. While she admitted to stabbing her partner and attempting to harm a street vendor in the subway, she claimed these actions were acts of self-defense. She also acknowledged her banned substance addiction and memory loss caused by prolonged inhalant abuse, but insisted she had no connection to the other assaults that terrorized the city. Regardless of her statements, the judge ordered her immediate transfer to a state prison to await the results of her trial. People who knew Eitzel were shocked by the news. They remembered the quiet, 20-year-old candy vendor on public transport, not a violent attacker. Some neighbors recalled arguments between Eitzel and her partner, Rafael, but many believed Rafael was the abuser. Rumors spread about whether Eitzel was truly the attacker or a scapegoat to calm the public. Her lawyers shared this concern, stating the accusations relied on unreliable, possibly forced, testimonies. He claimed Eitzel acted in self-defense against both her abusive partner and an attacker on the subway. He argued her arrest seemed like a stunt rather than a fair legal process. He claimed the police raided her home without a warrant, using weapons and intimidation, which terrorized her and her family. He further stated that some witnesses were intimidated or forced to give false testimony against her. Rafael's involvement in the case was also called into question. He testified during the first trial in 2016 that he never wanted to press charges against Eitzel and that his original statements were coerced. He alleged the police beat him and tricked him into making a formal deposition. These inconsistencies weakened the prosecution's case. In August 2016, after a long and disputed trial, the court acquitted Eitzel of attempted homicide against her former partner. The court ruled that the evidence was insufficient for a conviction. However, her legal troubles continued. She still faced 4 other charges, including aggravated assault, attempted murder, and qualified homicide. Her lawyer insisted he had testimony and evidence to disprove each charge. Despite this, the legal process continued, fueled by intense public pressure. In July 2017, after a second trial, Eitzel, then 22, was found guilty of attempted murder with aggravating circumstances against Jorge, a street vendor leader. She received a 20-year prison sentence. Initially, she faced 6 accusations, but 3 were dismissed. The remaining 2 accusations were still being processed in the legal system as of July 2025, when this investigation ended, but there have been no further public updates on them. Although the authorities believed Eitzel was the main suspect in a series of knife attacks, questions remained. Disturbingly, 2 more stabbings occurred after she was arrested. Both involved female attackers using the same methods, surprise attacks from behind with a sharp weapon and no clear motive. This meant the characteristics previously used to identify Eitzel could also describe another person who was still at large. Now 30, Eitzel is still in state prison. Her life, once filled with turmoil, is now eerily quiet within the prison walls. She has no visitors and rarely talks, even to other inmates. Guards say she is isolated, often mumbling nonsense at night and sometimes laughing alone, as if sharing secrets with someone invisible. Some believe she is haunted, not only by her possible crimes, but also by her knowledge. Eitzel's story is disturbing and sad. She was born into a life of poverty, addiction, and violence and is now accused of crimes many think she didn't do. Was she a violent criminal, someone lost in life, or just an easy target to reassure a frightened community? Some questions remain. What if the real attacker is still out there? What if Eitzel was just a victim of public fear, punished for her personal struggles, addictions, and poverty, rather than her actions? Deborah and Taylor Meyer first met in southern Indiana through mutual friends and community ties. Both were young adults focused on their careers and futures. Deborah graduated from Jeffersonville High School in 2006 and was pursuing a career in nursing, driven by her natural desire to help others. She was attending 3 institutions: Indiana University Southeast, the University of Louisville, and Ivy Tech, to earn her Bachelor of Science in Nursing, reflecting her dedication and hard work. As their friendship grew, Deborah and Taylor discovered they shared similar values and aspirations, particularly their dreams of building a loving family. They often discussed marriage, children, and a life centered on love and respect. Deborah appreciated Taylor's commitment to being a loving partner and father, which mirrored her own vision of family life. Deborah was strong-willed and adventurous, and she enjoyed the outdoors, traveling, and exploring nature. Her dynamic spirit attracted Taylor, and to outsiders, they appeared to be a deeply loving couple, filled with hope for the future. Deborah and Taylor were excited about their future together as their friendship blossomed into love. In November 2021, they celebrated their wedding, marking the beginning of their journey as husband and wife. Their special day was a testament to their love and shared dreams of family life in Jeffersonville, Indiana. After their marriage, Deborah wholeheartedly embraced her personal and professional life. She had always wanted to be a mother and welcomed their first child in 2020. This indicates that Deborah might have become pregnant before the wedding, which is common for couples committed to starting a family. The birth of their first child brought them immense joy and strengthened their bond as they navigated the challenges of parenthood. Deborah gave birth to her second child in 2022 and her third in 2023, reflecting her desire for a large family. During this time, Deborah also excelled in her nursing career, dedicating herself to caring for others. She received the Daisy Award and was promoted to nurse manager at Wellstone Regional Hospital, recognizing her exceptional skills and compassion over her 15 years of service. Deborah's promotion to nurse manager marked an important milestone in her career, highlighting her leadership skills and clinical expertise. Both her colleagues and patients admired her exceptional abilities, which helped build her reputation as a dedicated and competent nurse. In addition, she successfully juggles the challenges of work while raising 3 young children, demonstrating her extraordinary strength and organizational skills. Above all, Deborah's commitment to her children was unwavering. She poured love, attention, and guidance into nurturing them, shaping their development with care. Friends and family observed how naturally she embraced motherhood, which clearly brought her great joy and fulfillment. She approached parenting with the same dedication she applied to her nursing career. However, after having children, some problems emerged in Deborah and Taylor's seemingly perfect life. The stress of raising 3 young children while both parents worked demanding jobs started to strain their relationship. What once felt like a solid partnership began to show signs of difficulty as they struggled to manage their various responsibilities. One major issue was Taylor's increasing suspicion and jealousy regarding Deborah's friendships and professional relationships. As she advanced in her career, and took on more responsibility as a nurse manager, Deborah naturally built stronger working relationships with her colleagues. This development made Taylor uncomfortable, especially concerning her interactions with male colleagues at the hospital. Taylor's trust issues appeared to stem from deeper insecurities he struggled to express or address in a healthy way. He began to misinterpret innocent professional interactions as potential threats to their marriage, leading to a mindset filled with paranoia. Despite Deborah's attempts to reassure him of her commitment and clarify the professional nature of her relationships, matters grew more complicated when Taylor fixated on one specific coworker. He claimed that Deborah had saved this coworker's name in her phone as her best friend, Emily. Whether this was true or not became a catalyst for Taylor's escalating jealousy and suspicion. He convinced himself that this coworker posed a romantic threat to their marriage, disregarding Deborah's explanations of their innocent professional bond. As Taylor's jealousy grew, his behavior changed from being supportive and loving to becoming increasingly controlling and possessive. He began closely monitoring Deborah's movements and questioning her about where she had been and whom she had talked to. This created a tense atmosphere in their home, particularly difficult for Deborah, who valued trust and open communication. The stress of managing Taylor's jealousy while caring for 3 young children and maintaining her demanding career began to take a toll on Deborah. She found herself constantly needing to reassure him about her dedication to their marriage, while also striving to excel as both a mother and a nurse manager. The emotional weight of addressing his insecurities, alongside her other responsibilities, grew increasingly overwhelming. Around this time, Taylor's engagement with his role as a husband and father started to decline. He appeared disconnected from family life, often choosing solitary activities over participating in household duties or spending quality time with his children. This pattern of withdrawal added to Deborah's burden as she navigated her demanding career and managed the majority of domestic responsibilities. Deborah accused her husband, Taylor, of neglecting her and their 3 young children by constantly playing video games. This message, discovered after a tragic incident in Udomurat and IF, highlighted Deborah's dissatisfaction with Taylor's disengagement from family life and his apparent preference for gaming over his responsibilities as a husband and father. The gaming habit became a major source of tension in their home. While Deborah worked long hours at the hospital and took care of their children, Taylor often escaped into video games rather than participating in family life. This disconnection caused her additional stress, as she felt she was essentially raising their children alone while also managing her career. Feeling overwhelmed by Taylor's behavior, Deborah sought support from trusted friends and family. She shared with them how exhausted she was from juggling her job and the rising demands at home. In one message, she expressed her desperation by saying, "Raising 3 kids is exhausting." This message showed her realization that her marriage was not the partnership she had hoped for. She wanted Taylor to be honest about his commitment to their family so she could make informed decisions about their future. Her willingness to consider raising the children on her own revealed her strength and her deep concern for her children's well-being. Despite the growing distance between them and Taylor's concerning behavior, Deborah remained committed to making her marriage work. She was determined to stay by Taylor's side, believing their marriage was worth saving. In December 2023, more than a year before the tragic events that would follow, Deborah bravely confronted Taylor about her suspicions of his infidelity. This conversation exposed significant issues in their marriage and reflected Deborah's increasing worries about Taylor's commitment. The confrontation was emotionally intense, with Deborah expressing feelings of betrayal, while Taylor reacted defensively and dismissed her concerns. Deborah accused him of regularly communicating with another woman and meeting her just before their family took Christmas photos. This accusation indicated that Deborah had found evidence of Taylor's possible infidelity and was attempting to address the issue within their relationship. The timing of these alleged meetings, especially before family photos, would have been particularly painful for Deborah, as it marred cherished family moments. The discovery of potential infidelity further strained their already fragile marriage. Deborah faced the heartbreaking realization that the man with whom she had built a family might not be the committed partner she had thought. This news would have been devastating for someone who had invested so much of herself into their relationship and children. Despite these personal struggles, Deborah continued to thrive in her professional life. Even as her home life became increasingly challenging, her ability to maintain her high work standards illustrated her resilience and dedication. Her colleagues remembered her as a skilled and compassionate worker. Even during an incredibly difficult period in her life, Deborah and Taylor recognized that their marriage was in serious trouble. So they scheduled a marriage counseling session for the 17th of February, 2025. Deborah still believed that their relationship could be saved through professional help and honest communication. She was committed to improving their marriage and healing the damage to their trust and connection. This decision to seek counseling showed that both of them understood their relationship needed assistance. For Deborah, it was another effort to save the marriage she valued. She was ready to openly discuss their issues, hoping to find a way to move forward together. However, in the weeks leading up to counseling, Taylor's jealousy and suspicions intensified. In January 2025, he claimed to have seen a photo of Deborah holding hands with a male colleague at a casino in southern Indiana. Whether real or misinterpreted, this image became an obsession for Taylor, fueling his anger over what he believed was Deborah's betrayal. His fixation on this photograph consumed him, leading him to irrational thoughts that Deborah was having an affair and planning to leave him and their children. Instead of seeing this potential interaction as innocent, his jealousy skewed his perception, leading him to interpret any friendly gesture from Deborah towards her male colleagues as evidence of infidelity. Taylor's inability to trust Deborah or express his concerns healthily created a toxic atmosphere that risked leading to tragedy. As Valentine's Day 2025 approached, Taylor decided to make a significant effort to save their marriage. He planned an elaborate romantic evening to reignite their connection and express his love for Deborah. The theme "Bringing Paris to You" was meant to showcase his dedication and creativity. He bought Deborah a new dress and ordered dinner from a Japanese steakhouse he thought she would like. He even included their 3 young children in the event by having them draw Eiffel Tower pictures for decorations. This family involvement aimed to make the evening special and demonstrated Taylor's intention to create a memorable experience. He wrote a heartfelt card and danced to their wedding song with Deborah. These romantic gestures indicated Taylor's understanding of what would resonate with Deborah and reflected on their shared past. Dancing to their wedding song was particularly meaningful, as it symbolized his desire to rekindle their past happiness. Later, Taylor expressed that he had tried harder than ever to demonstrate his love and commitment to Deborah and their marriage. This statement highlighted his desperation to mend their relationship and his frustration with what he saw as Deborah's lack of appreciation for his efforts. He believed that a romantic evening could resolve deep-seated marital problems, but rebuilding trust and intimacy took a long-term effort. On February 14, 2025, Taylor celebrated Valentine's Day with high expectations. However, when Deborah's response was less enthusiastic than he had expected, he took it as a sign that she was not interested in the marriage. He grew increasingly agitated when she seemed distant during dinner, and his frustration mounted as the evening continued. Deborah's reaction may have reflected the stress of marital conflict, the exhaustion of working and raising 3 children, or simply the realization that romantic gestures alone were not enough to mend the rift in their relationship. Her response was influenced by months of tension, mistrust, and emotional distance that had plagued their marriage recently. The situation escalated quickly after a meal, when an argument broke out between Taylor and Deborah. Taylor accused Deborah of not appreciating his efforts and questioned her commitment to their relationship. The atmosphere became so tense that Deborah decided to leave temporarily to cool off. She got into her Ford Explorer and drove away, needing some time to process what had just happened. Meanwhile, Taylor's anger grew when she left, and he began to suspect that she was meeting a coworker. He thought she was having an affair with a... This suspicion was fueled by the timing of her departure, which coincided with what he assumed was the end of this man's work shift. About 20 minutes later, when Deborah returned home, Taylor was waiting, her suspicions and anger rising. As she went to the bathroom to freshen up, Taylor tried to read her text messages on her smartwatch, searching for proof of what he believed was her betrayal. His jealousy led him to become increasingly invasive and controlling. When Deborah noticed Taylor trying to access her messages, she confronted him about invading her privacy. In response, Taylor demanded to see her cell phone, insisting that she hand it over so he could search through her messages. When Deborah refused, the situation escalated into physical violence with serious consequences. The argument quickly turned into a physical struggle as Taylor tried to forcibly take Deborah's phone from her. In this confrontation, Deborah defended herself by punching Taylor, but he overpowered her and took the phone. With her phone now in his possession, he started to choke Deborah as she pleaded with him to stop. She expressed her fear for her life and concern for their 3 young children who were asleep upstairs, asking him what he was going to do, whether he was going to kill her. As the violent confrontation continued, Deborah attempted to protect herself by hitting Taylor with a water bottle. But this only seemed to fuel his anger. In retaliation, Taylor grabbed a wine bottle and struck Deborah repeatedly in the head until she lost consciousness, leaving her motionless on the floor. Instead of stopping, Taylor's rage took a darker turn. He left her on the floor and went to the kitchen, where he retrieved a large kitchen knife. With the knife in hand, he returned to where Deborah lay helpless and began to repeatedly attack her in the chest and other areas of her body. The attack was brutal and lasted for an extended period of time. The scene was horrific, with blood splattered throughout the room. After the attack, he used Deborah's phone to take a picture of her lifeless body and sent it to a contact labeled her best friend Emily, with the message, "Your fault." The photograph was intended to traumatize the recipient and to place blame for Deborah's death on someone Taylor viewed as responsible for the destruction of his marriage. His actions revealed the depth of his delusion and his inability to accept responsibility for his own violent behavior. In Taylor's distorted thinking, Deborah's death was not the result of his choices, but rather the inevitable consequence of what he perceived as her betrayal. Following the murder, Taylor also sent messages to Deborah's friends and family members, informing them that he had killed her. These communications were sent through text messages and family group chats, creating a horrifying situation for those who received them. While Taylor was sending these messages and taking photographs, the 3 children remained asleep upstairs in their home, unaware that their mother had been murdered and their father had become a killer. One of Deborah's friends, who had received Taylor's disturbing messages, immediately recognized the severity of the situation and contacted the Jeffersonville Police Department. This friend also drove to Deborah's home to assist the officers, demonstrating quick thinking and bravery that potentially prevented an even greater tragedy. When the friend arrived at the house and began speaking with police officers who had responded to the scene, he received the horrifying photograph that Taylor had sent from Deborah's phone. This image confirmed the worst fears about what had happened inside the home and provided officers with crucial information about the situation they were about to encounter. Officers initially attempted to make contact with someone inside the house by knocking on the front door, but they received no response to their efforts. Given the information they had received about the domestic disturbance and the photograph showing what appeared to be a body, police made the decision to breach the front door in an attempt to reach any potential victims inside. As officers prepared to force entry into the home, the garage door suddenly opened and Taylor emerged from inside the house. His behavior toward the responding officers was immediately aggressive and non-compliant, forcing them to use control techniques to subdue him as quickly as possible. The confrontation required additional backup from Indiana State Police, who recognized the intensity of the situation and offered immediate assistance. Once Taylor was safely in custody, officers entered the house and discovered the horrific scene that awaited them inside. Deborah's body was found on the bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of the brutal attack that had taken her life. The amount of blood and the obvious violence of the crime scene painted a clear picture of what had occurred in the final moments of Deborah's life. Crime scene investigators arrived to begin their meticulous task of collecting every piece of evidence from her home. They meticulously examined every corner of the house, searching for clues that could provide insight into the events that had unfolded that night. The investigators documented the scene thoroughly, taking photographs and collecting samples that would be crucial for the prosecution's case, the evidence collected from the crime scene painted a clear picture of the brutal assault that had taken Deborah's life. The location of blood spatter, the position of her body, and the weapon used in the attack all provided crucial details about how the murder had been carried out. This physical evidence would later corroborate Taylor's own confession about the events of that night. At the police station, Taylor was questioned by investigators about his involvement in the murder of his wife. During these interviews, which were captured on body camera footage, Taylor provided detailed accounts of his actions and motivations on the night of Deborah's death. His willingness to confess and his matter-of-fact description of the violence revealed the extent of his psychological break from reality. After his confession and the conclusion of the initial investigation, Taylor was officially arrested and charged with murder. He was taken to the Clark County Detention Center, where he is being held without bail because of the seriousness of the charges. The court decided to deny bail based on the perceived threat he poses to the community. On the 18th of March, 2025, Taylor Meyer pleaded not guilty to the murder charge. His trial is set to start on the 15th of July, 2025, where he may face a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole for the violent murder of his wife.